call this regular meeting of the Fargo School Board to order. Before we get started, I do want to acknowledge that it is Election Day, so I thank all of those that have submitted their name as candidates on the ballot. Serving as a school board member is one of the greatest privileges of my life and honor of my life, so good luck to all the candidates, and we'll be watching as the results come in. So we do have an agenda in front of us. I would entertain a motion. Jim.
I move adoption of the agenda with the addition of an HR addendum to be added to item 4B as provided at our workstation.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor with proceeding with the agenda in front of us, please vote by saying yes.
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 Any opposed? No. All right, we will carry on. Staff reports, 3A, results, superintendent, I'm not even going to try to say it. Dr. Gandhi, would you like to make introductions, please?
Sure. Part of our strategic plan, one important component for us as a district as we learn and grow is continuous improvement and accountability monitoring. The tool that we use, as most of you know, is the Accreditation agency, Advanced Ed, and their visits as we prepare for district visits and then also do internal campus visits as well. Advanced Ed is now known as Cognia moving forward, but every year we present, our team will present to you the schools that have upcoming visits and what they're doing and what their focuses are. So with that being said, we have a series of speakers that will come today and present to you from the perspective of their individual schools. Because of social distancing, they are standing outside and they'll be coming in one-on-one, one by one. So we ask that if you do have questions, instead of waiting to the end, maybe you just ask them after each school, because they're not all going to be here presenting at the same time, just so we can adhere to social distancing guidelines. So with that being said, I will ask Sean Safransky from Davies High School, and he is one of the leads for our Cognia team in Fargo Public Schools.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. As he had said, Sean Safransky. I'm assistant principal at Davies High School, along with Cheryl Jansen, principal at McKinley. Her and I both kind of co-chair our school improvement and accreditation team here at Fargo Public Schools. And a lot of this is a lot of the similar stuff from years past, but just for people to know, Advanced Ed was the name of the accrediting agency that is responsible for thousands of schools across the world and all of every school in North Dakota. They changed their name to Cognia. So it seems every few years they're always going through lots of changes, and as a school improvement organization, they're always changing their name, it seems. So Cognia is their new accreditation name. DPI uses Cognia as a tool, and it's a part of the federal requirements for ESSA. And the accreditation process for schools is on a 5-year process, and that's kind of noteworthy because next year, pending our coronavirus changes and things that may change, we are supposed to have our big visit next year, possibly sometime in the spring, but again, things could change, but that is our plan as we kind of prepare this summer and next fall. Why do we do these internal reviews? I'll talk about Davies, and the other presenters will talk about their schools. It's really, review teams are made up of people from Fargo Public, principals, counselors, teachers, strategists, you name it. It is really to prepare schools for that 2020-2021 visit. It very much mimics and mirrors the procedures, the interviews, the questions, the type of data digs that you want to have prepared for schools. So it's kind of a practice for that. Helps ensure consistency so that no matter what school, that review team, they're not going to be able to come to all 23 schools here at Fargo Public. They might pick 5, 6, or 7, and that hopefully ensures whatever school they go to, they're going to have a very similar experience, and when they meet together and share the information they gather, they're going to hear a lot of that consistency across the school district. And since we are a district accreditation, it's not building by building, we believe that consistency is very important. And probably most importantly, we believe it provides building leaders with really good feedback. It's great to have just a different set of eyes. I love going into those elementary school buildings because just seeing things in a very different view, and I think it's great to have those elementary people come to your high schools and vice versa. I just think anytime we have our own colleagues that can give us feedback on what we're seeing, because sometimes you get so wrapped up in the day-to-day things that are going, there can be those things right in front of your face that you just really don't recognize. So that really most importantly is hopefully provide us feedback as we work through what's that continuous improvement process. New demographics, most of you are all aware. Davies High School, 1,300 students. There's about 164 full-time staff, 98 teachers. We're about 8% ELL, 18% free and reduced. What makes Davies unique? Davies is the largest school in the district and continues to experience enrollment growth. There are 254 different students took AP classes with 500 exams given. That is, I would guess, probably the largest number in probably the state of North Dakota. So we're super proud of the way our teachers really promote that and get kids excited about challenging themselves with those AP classes and not just taking the class, but actually putting the work in to take that test and see if they can pass. Some of our challenges continue to be kind of that physical space to efficiently manage a growing student and staff population, and continued increases in the social and emotional needs of our students continues to be one of those things that's an area of concern and an area that we're really trying to put focus on as we see that need grow with all our students. There are two areas. We're going to start with powerful practices. So the review team, as they went through our building, did our interviews of students, staff, sat inside classrooms, sat in lunchrooms, did all those kind of things. There are kind of three areas that they gave us some kind of commendations on. First one, at Davies High School, the culture that surrounds 21st century skills and 21st century skill application and innovation to real world situations, as well as college and career readiness. They believe that they found evidence gathered from the classroom observations and student interviews provided explicit examples of this work and how it was relevant to our learning. That definitely has been, I know, a focus across the district, and so we are pretty excited to see our review team actually see that in action in the classroom. Davies High School has been a pioneer in the Standards Reference Education Initiative inside Fargo Public Schools. Administration and staff have made this a singular focus, and there is evidence that the staff feel supported by administration and appreciate the time allocated by building administration to focus on the ELO initiative. It's been a few growing pains, and just like with any initiative in any school, there's a steep learning curve. I think we really made some nice progress there, and we've done a nice job of kind of getting teachers on board. Are we there yet? Absolutely not. We got a long way to go, but we're really excited and proud of the work that we have put in and the work that our teachers have put in with this initiative. And the last powerful practice, the overarching motto, work hard, be yourself, do the right thing, has students feeling that not only the learning culture breeds success, but the education and empowerment of the whole population to grow and learn. Students and staff articulated that this is something that they strive to live and is evidenced by hallway behavior, classroom behavior, and general school-wide atmosphere. This is probably one of the things, powerful practices, when we share with our staff, we are most proud of. I believe everybody's administrator's job is to try to provide that learning environment, that positive learning culture for every single student, and just to try and hear an affirmation that they're seeing a lot of those positive things, that do the right thing most importantly. So we're really excited to see that, and I think it's great that we could share with our teachers the efforts that they're putting in, that it's recognized by others. The next one are just some opportunities for growth. And these opportunities, there are three there. While students and staff definitely have positive relationships, there does not appear to be a formal structure in place to ensure those relationships are fostered. Although there are programs for many students, how do you ensure those students who are reluctant to seek out relationships are being recognized? Is there a formal process for ensuring all students are connected to school in some way? And so it made us look at, we have lots of programs, a lot of things we're doing for different kids in different groups, but then again, there are always sometimes that group of kids that's just hard to recognize. Maybe they fly under the radar. And what can we do just to ensure that we have that 100%, we don't have those kids flying under the radar and then worrying about what's going on there themselves academically, socially, emotionally, all those. So that's number one. Number two, ensure there is consistency across the building on how ELOs are created and assessed. Additionally, that ELO proficiency scales are explained well to students. Ensuring that there are building-wide procedures as you continue building this process. Education and training is essential to ensuring all staff and students have a firm understanding of how ELOs drive instruction, learning activities, and assessments. And I know a part of this comes from the fact that As I believe we've had a lot of teachers really pioneering a lot of the standards-based education initiatives. There are some teachers who are a little bit on the front edge, they're really pushing that, and there are some teachers that are like, it's taking me a little bit to get my mind wrapped around this. I want to move slowly so that I'm moving appropriately. And that can be tough sometimes for one student. They go to Mr. Paulson's classroom, and he's really doing standards-based education stuff, and he's, talking a little bit different language. Or, and could be then, student then very next period goes to Mrs. Ulrich's class, and she teaches it or speaks a little bit differently. And so sometimes that can be confusing for students, so that was just one area that we have definitely recognized, and it was kind of good to hear that as well, that needs to be a focus as we continue to do that, to make sure we have consistency with all teachers and all students are hearing that same message. And lastly, Davies High School will need to establish initiatives that continue to support district-wide progression, implementing those ELOs. This review team recognized Davies High School is in the process of building systems to embrace the ELO shift within the district, and with change, there will be challenges. Despite processes where the process is measured, develop processes where progress is measured and challenges are identified to ensure seamless implementation. So that's part of that, just how can we have regular checks of ourselves and the progress we're making, so that if we get to a checkpoint and we're not seeing the progress or we see a hiccup, then how can we kind of regroup, fix those little fires or fix those things, those challenges, and then keep making progress and have those regular checks. That is my presentation. Any questions or anything before we have our next group come up?
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thanks, Sean. This is a great report, and I appreciate you sharing and walking through both the powerful practices as well as the opportunities for growth. And you mentioned that not all schools does advanced ed. I'm trying to think of the new name.
Cognia.
Cognia, thank you. Visit every single school, but that hope is that these are applicable, or that these are applied, and that there's some uniform experiences throughout the district. So when they've identified these opportunities for growth, is it then something that is applied at every single building, or are these unique just to Davies, for example?
Yep. These would just be very specific to Davies High School.
Okay.
And I think as the other schools come up, their representatives, as they share, you'll probably see maybe some similarities, but you'll see very unique aspects to their building. When that review team, Cognia, comes in, they will be much more a very broad district-wide. Here are your opportunities for growth, and here are the things that you're doing really well. They tend to not single or identify schools. They will give large themes, but for ourselves, we try to be more specific for each building.
I guess also where I was sort of going with that is, if this is something that's been identified at Davies, does the district then look, at all buildings to make sure that there is some uniformity with these particular areas?
Yep, so then with all the buildings, our hope is that in that 5-year cycle, every building will go through the same process. So then next year, we won't have our own internal, we'll just prepare for the large visit. So hopefully by that time, then every school will have had an internal review, will have had their feedback and such things like that, so that prepares them for that visit next year.
Go ahead, Brian.
Do you find all the students and the teachers and the employees engaged in this process? You really find this meaningful?
Like anything, there's always varying levels. I think the school improvement itself, I think inherently for most people, I find very positive in that the feedback they get back. And we try to create, at least when we write our reports, and most of these that are in quotes are from the report team, they're singling out a department or a group or anything like that. They try to get very overarching, and so we try to be careful and sensitive not to make anyone look bad anyway. We want to just try to highlight what are some opportunities, maybe some low-hanging fruit that you could pick, and boy, then you could really count that as a success. I think overall, a lot of these things are initiatives a lot of schools are already doing anyway, so it's not a huge add-on or lots of extra work. It just helps, maybe gives us some insight and enlightens us to maybe what are some things that we could look at differently and maybe continue to make more progress.
Thank you.
Rebecca?
So within, say, the various powerful practices, is there data additional that supports each of these? Well, I would imagine there is. It's not just pulled out of thin air. But I'm just wondering if someone wanted to delve deeper into, for example, the statement, students and staff articulated that this is something they strive to live by. Well, you know, how many do articulate something? How many don't agree? Is there the opportunity to delve deeper so that you can utilize the information more thoroughly?
Sure. Usually a part of the process is us as a building, we will kind of give that review team kind of a heads up, like, hey, these are some things we would like you to look for. These are what we think maybe are some strengths. These are what we see as some weaknesses. That helps to give the review team an idea of maybe what questions should we ask students. I mean, I remember talking to the review team about, you know, we're doing a lot of stuff with standards-based education. It'd be great to get some feedback on that. So I'm assuming that review team orchestrated or created some of the questions when they talk with students and teachers. And we'll start the day with a panel of 8 students in a group, maybe grades 9 and 10 with a group of the review team, and 10 and 11. And they'll do that for 45 minutes, ask lots of various questions, and just try see what, and then after that, they'll do a lot of comparing answers, like what did the freshmen say, what did those seniors say, and just to try see if they're getting some similar responses, and then that gives them kind of some good data. If maybe they're hearing different things, then that tells that review team, hey, you know, when we go into the classrooms, let's look for this, because we heard this over here, and we heard this, very different. Let's see why we're hearing those different things. If they're hearing similarities, then they kind of have a strong idea like, oh, that's giving us pretty good evidence. The classroom observations, there is kind of a protocol for classroom observations where everybody on the review team, they'll go into a classroom for 20 minutes, and Cognia has developed kind of an observation student engagement. It's not a teacher evaluation thing. We'd be real careful to make sure everybody knows that. It's a student engagement, and what are you seeing students doing? Are you seeing them using their electronics? Are you seeing them interacting with students in small groups of 5? What are they doing? And then it's a little check mark, and you get a rating and a score afterward. And so that's another little piece of evidence that after a review team of 5 or 6, they do 25 observations, and it gets tabulated. And it's not the be-all, end-all, but it is just a piece of information then that review team uses to try and develop that report where they see those maybe strengths and weaknesses.
Thank you for that overview. I would, just a minute here, I would liken this to a financial audit. Our financial auditors come in and they sample and they test different pieces and components of my organization and cross-reference them. And then every 5th year, they come in and do a deep dive into the district. So this is just one of those audits that they sample and statistically spread that out through the school district. So I thank you for, this is a very good conversation and a great overview. My guess is you're going to get the most of the questions and you're going to answer most of them for the group.
That's totally
So
fine.
I hope that we can spread them out amongst our presenters. Dr. Gandhi?
Sure, and I think just to give board members some context, I think I was going to delineate between 2 things. We have school improvement plans, and then we have this process. And I think it's important to kind of get the full context around both. So based on just state requirements in our own district practices, every school every year will create school improvement plans. In those plans, you know, we use the terms in our district, what's loose and what's tight. Each school has the autonomy to develop some of their own goals that they need to focus on based on their individual school needs. However, there's also a piece of that plan that's aligned to district goals that we expect out of all of our schools. Now, they create their school improvement plans and implement those plans with the leadership teams that they have on their schools to achieve their goals. Now, the school improvement process is a process that Advanced Ed uses to get a sampling of 5 schools every 5 years in our district. We replicate that process. What you're seeing today is what's a result of that process. So when we do our own internal reviews on our schools, the feedback that they get becomes either the highlights become their powerful practices, and then the opportunities for growth as the data is collected from that visit. And as Sean said, there's specific protocols on how you do that visit and how you collect the data themselves. So each school also has their own school improvement plans. They have their own goals, and then they have goals that are aligned to the district. But then they also do a visit, and in that visit, the leadership team will say, this is what we want you to look for in our schools. This is how you can collect data, whether it's through classroom observations, whether it's talking to students. And then based on that data collected and implementing that protocol, what you see today in front of you is what each of the schools are going to present.
All right, then that, I will pass the baton to Clara Barton-Hawthorne. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so I'm the principal of Clara Barton-Hawthorne, Rebecca Folden. We had our internal review December 9th and 10th, which seems like a lifetime ago. March seems like a lifetime ago, so just our building pictures there. When I took over 6 years as the principal, we did not have a vision or a mission, so that was one of the first things we did. We have always had school beliefs, and this is the language that we use with our kids, language I use with parents and staff. And we really wanted that mission and vision to reflect our school beliefs. So 6 years ago, we created a mission and a vision for Clara Barton-Hawthorne, which is very similar to the Fargo Public Schools mission and vision. Clara Barton, just some basic information. We have about 400 students. Last year we had around 199 at Hawthorne and 203 at Clara Barton. We are a split campus, so Hawthorne is our K-2 kids and Clara Barton is our 3-5. We are a non-title school. We are about 29.3% free and reduced. There are great things about being not title. I don't have to do all the lovely paperwork that comes with it, but there are problems with that too because we don't get some of the additional funding, some of the additional supports that other buildings get. We are about, well, last year we had 20 classroom sections with the average teacher experience of 16 years. What makes us unique, well, first of all, we're the best elementary school in Fargo, I think. But we have a very strong MTSS program. We know our kids, we know their needs, we know the interventions that are in place for them, and so that is led by classroom teachers and myself. And I really like to sit in on those meetings. I lead the Tier 3 teams just because I think it's important for me as the building leader to know the needs of our kids. We are a data-driven school, so at our PLCs, we are looking at student data and determining what needs to come of that. What makes us unique? We're a split campus. That is one of our biggest strengths, and I would say, going down to the next spot, it's also one of our biggest challenges. We split in 2003, and I'm sure back then, I was a brand new teacher back then, but I'm sure there was lots of feedback about having a split. If you tried to put us together today and have us two separate schools, you would hear just as much feedback. We are considered a larger elementary. We have 400 plus kids, but everybody in our buildings, because you have 200 at one campus, 200 at another campus, we know our kids. And I think that just, you have a very small neighborhood school feel in our buildings. And so, to me, it's a challenge, but it's also one of our greatest assets. And then, just another challenge, I think, and this is in every school, is just the increased social emotional needs that we're facing. And I think when we come back after this year, that's going to be a big one as well, just because of everything that's happened. So, just as Sean shared, we had some powerful practices come from our visit. Even because we're a split campus, the visit looks different. Typically, a school has 4 to 5 people come to your school to do the visit. Because we're a split campus, we had 2 at one campus and 2 at another. So it was a lot to see for 2 people in each building. But the positive practices was the school-wide culture, that the staff members are supporting students. Very obvious when they were walking through the building. And I think, again, that comes to our size, having smaller numbers. Just that split campus making for a small school feel. So some other powerful practices. We have our very well-managed classrooms. I just can't toot the horn of our teachers enough. They're amazing. So school-wide behavior expectations were shared and discussed daily. That comes back to our school beliefs. We have a pause team. We are the Huskies. And so we have a pause team that does social emotional planning for the year, along with our PBIS team. And then our MTSS practices were known for powerful practices. And so again, focusing on that MTSS, data collected, analyzed, interventions are in place. And then the progress monitoring to ensure growth or a need for a new intervention. And again, we had opportunities for improvement. So with those opportunities, the first one was a clear continuous improvement plan. As Sean shared, we went from advanced ed to Cognia, and the tool was new to us all last year. This year, last year we wrote them more as a building plan, and this year we have written our plans. All of the elementary schools look very similar, or excuse me, all of the Fargo schools look very similar, and then we add our individual components into it, so the plan is more aligned with every building. And then development of an MTSS A and B system, A academic, B behavioral. And this is a little bit harder at our site because we're two split campuses. We don't have the full staff at each site. So our MTSS sites do both academic and behavior at the same time, and they just weren't able to see that on their visit. So, and I think the bottom one is one that we strive for all the time. With limited support staff, we don't have title funding, we don't have the additional support in our building. How can we get creative with giving kids interventions with staff when we don't always have those people? So how can we think outside the box to help them? Questions?
I've got Jennifer and David. Do you have your hand up too? Okay. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay, so I saved this one. And it worked out perfectly because you said you're a data-driven school. But sort of what Rebecca was asking along those lines, so I know that the improvement plans are listed from both advanced ed and schools online under the initiatives. And however, as far as year after year or every 5 year, or whatever the cycle is that you are monitoring these improvement priorities, where would a person find those types of updates?
So in the plan itself, there is an evaluation section of it where we have everything listed in there. So at the start of the year, I go through and I have a document that I compare cohort kids and grade level kids, and we have all the data from almost the last 8 years. And that's kind of our starting point, and then we look at that as our ending point too, to see what grades have improved, what areas have been a struggle. This year it looks a little different because we don't have a lot of data just because we weren't in the building, but that is in the evaluation section of the Cognia plan.
Thank you.
Great. David?
I thank you for your presentation, and this isn't really, it doesn't have anything to do with this, but I know the concern you have for your kids. We're proposing a new plan for the Clara Barton students. And I'd like to know how you feel about that. Do you think that that's a correct decision? Would you have another suggestion?
I got phone calls, I'm not gonna lie, after the board meeting. Our kids just want to be together, and I think it's really important for them to have that opportunity. So I like the idea that they're looking for everyone to go together. I don't think parents, when we had our PTA meeting, and I know you were there, they don't care what school. They really don't. They just wanted our kids to be together. My only concern is we still have a little section that isn't together. And I get that little section is because it's close to Carl Ben. But I don't know, I don't know what the plans will become of that, if there will be opportunities for them to possibly go north, or I think transportation is always the issue. Will there be transportation if they were to go north? But our kids just want to be together.
Did you have? Go ahead, Ruka.
Becky, sorry to put you on the spot. This isn't as much school improvement process, but you talked a little bit about supports for your kids. And can you talk briefly about the Husky Hutch program? Because it is a shining star at CBH, and it's been extremely relevant during the distance learning for some of our neediest families as well. So can you just give a little highlight about that?
Yeah, so I actually walked the building today with Missy, and we have this basement, the old Creative Arts studio, that we can't use for anything because it's not fire coded. So we were thinking long and hard, what can we do that would benefit our kids? And we have some staff members that thought, can we do a little food pantry? Great, we have this space, let's put a food pantry out. There is no funding for this, so we have created this through the generosity of others and our PTA. And so we have a whole room downstairs that has everything under the sun, canned goods. We have freezers that have hamburger and turkeys, and it just gives me goosebumps. We have stuff everywhere. Then we bought a washer and dryer so that schools can send us their lost and found gear. We wash it. I went through my closet and donated half my clothes to, not half, about a tenth of my clothes to this. But families from any elementary school can come through, and if they have siblings at a middle or high school, they can come through. They can shop. We literally have a cart downstairs. They can shop. And they can take as much as they need. They can come as often as they want. We've given all of the Swifts in the schools access to our buildings, and now this summer we gave the counselors access too. So they can come in and get any needed supplies. If they need 80 pounds of food, they can get it. It's plenty full. When we started this process through COVID, I just reached out to the elementary principals saying, your kids are coming to our school. We're funding this truly through businesses that have heard about this and said, here's $500, or, and so the principals, many of our principals said, you can take my emergency funds, here's $1,000, go buy food. And so it's stacked full of food. We've got anyone, babies to adults coming that need food. Right now, they're not in the building, so somebody's shopping for them and giving them the items, but no questions asked. They can come and get what they need.
So how do we donate? Where do we drop it off?
You can contact me, you can come to Clara Barton, or the foundation also has a link that you can donate through the foundation.
Thanks for all you guys do.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I think we have probably helped over 150 families through COVID.
Awesome.
It's amazing, but it's also amazing for the coordinator of that program. And because I know that's a lot of work. So thank you for doing what
Well,
you're doing.
and I can't even take credit, it is not me. It is Julie Hetland, our office assistant, who lives a block from our school, who this is her passion. It's just her passion, and it's her baby, and we've all jumped in because we see the benefits, so.
Nice. Rebecca?
So now during COVID, if someone needs something, and I'm sure there's information on the website, but what is the best way for people to be able to find out how to obtain those resources and make arrangements to get items?
So I emailed all of the principals. We have, just like in Fargo Public Schools, we have a Husky Hutch email that is anonymous. They can just send it to us saying, I need items. It goes to myself and Julie Hetland, and then we just schedule with them a time that they need to get it. So I gave them items for their newsletters and to send Connect Ads out so that they could reach families.
Wonderful.
I just have to go back to one of your first comments, Rebecca, and echo that I think you were spot on. Hawthorne and Clara Barton may well be our finest elementary building.
I agree
But I
completely.
might be biased.
It's just, I have been in other buildings and I'm not saying anything. It's just, it's got this amazing homey feeling that is wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome, Principal Dolan.
They just gave me the call that I was supposed to be here. So I made it in time. So thanks for being here. In fact, thanks for serving on the board. I know that it takes all that extra time and so forth, and I appreciate that. And our community and students and staff appreciate that as well. Again, we had our visit here this past spring. And the first slide up there, which I think you've seen, right? Gives you some demographics. We're just a little under 900 students. 23% of our students are on free and reduced, and that's been an increase. Generally, it was underneath that number for a while. Teaching years of experience is 13. Again, that's changing too, our demographics, and our teachers don't stay as long as they used to. And again, we have a lot of students or teachers that have the advanced degrees. U.S. News and World Report ranked us as the #1 performing high school in North Dakota for the last 2 years, and so we're real proud of that. Again, that's based on our students' performances in our ACT and standardized testing, also our AP program as well. And again, I think we have that rich tradition of academic excellence, and including national merit scholars. 79% of our students are involved in at least one school activity which is a nice number. We always strive to have more. In fact, one of our goals for all of our incoming freshmen is to be involved in at least 2 activities to try to get them started. And one of the things that we're doing next year is that we're adjusting our bell schedule. I don't know if you've talked to the board about that, but we're adjusting our bell schedule to accommodate some of our Friday early morning activities to happen during that time. So next year, we hope to even see that increase. And then as a group comes in and evaluates and takes a look at your program, again, they indicate there's a need to develop a more consistent student and staff understanding of the implementation of standards-based assessment and reporting. And last year, we spent some of our professional development time getting better at understanding what standards-based grading and standards-based reporting, standard-based instruction is. And I think we're moving in that direction with the idea of implementation. And actually, some of our teachers are also dovetailing in that category. And then the other one that was kind of interesting, there's a need to clarify the process and varying levels of MTSS, multi-tiered support system. And really what's happened is that we had a name called our HIT committee. HIT committee, it was an acronym that we started a long, long time ago, Help in Time. And we've never changed it. And so everybody understands it to be a HIT committee at North, because we meet weekly as counselors and administrative group as well. And so we just need to do a better job of publicizing and changing our name actually to an MTSS committee. But again, we've been on board with regards to collaborating with regards to what needs are needed for each individual student. And so the next slide really talks about our powerful practices. And again, part of what we have done is try to meet the needs of our students through academic performances, academic programs. We have an academy program that reaches some of the kids that are at risk, trying to develop strategies and skills. But we're also considering whether that's the best method to do that. I mean, there's, in fact, Dr. Gandhi and I were having a conversation today about what direction do we want to go with regards to closing the achievement gap between different groups and subgroups and so forth. And, part of our challenge might be is to reevaluate that about whether or not we continue with the at-risk programs and maybe try to make sure all those strategies are being used in all classrooms, not just in the classrooms where kids maybe struggle academically. But it also has been successful. I mean, we've noticed that students, when we first started the program back in 2003 and then expanded it in 2006 when we added freshmen, the efforts that our teachers and our students did at that time was that they were getting a letter grade better than they did previously. So if they were getting D's at Ben Franklin in 9th grade, because that's what it was at that time, then they were getting C's. Or if they were getting C's, they're now getting B's. So it actually jumped a full letter grade in terms of the performances of our students. So I think there's a real need to have that discussion, and also other programs too, not just the academy program, which helps the at-risk kids, but also our AP program as well. We have a lot of kids taking AP courses and AP exams, but are we reaching all the diversity of learners that we have at our building? And again, you can see the areas of strengths and so forth, which I think are very consistent with other schools in our district, so I don't think I have to read that to you. But I think that's the challenge in every building, is to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students as well. And then I think my last slide here is really the review team identified the champion and core ILC programs as effective interventions to increase student achievement. Let me just talk a little bit about our champion program. Our champion program identifies students who could benefit from having an adult influence in their lives. And we identify the kids that, by the help of Ben Franklin administration and teachers there, to identify the kids that would really benefit from having an adult be a mentor for them. And last year what we did, and maybe it's even the last 2 years, we actually also sent a letter home to parents indicating, hey, we've identified another parent, or excuse me, another teacher or staff member at North High School that would be another advocate for your student. And everybody was pretty happy with that. We thought, well, should we identify them? And that actually helped, I think, in terms of notifying parents and so forth. We also have a core area ILC program which helps kids who are struggling in the core areas of math, English, science, and social studies. And we identify kids who are below a certain percentage and then provide them the extra support. we're adjusting that program for next year because what we've done is during open periods for students and trying to match them with an expert in that area, so a math teacher. But if you haven't taught AP Calculus for a while, for another math teacher who is trying to help a student in AP Calc, or it could be just the opposite too, somebody who hasn't taken geometry for a while, and it's a teacher who's teaching maybe college algebra and trig, you probably have to brush up just a little bit with regards to some of those categories and those questions that kids have. So next year, our intervention is going to be before school for students, and they'll be matched up with the teacher that they have. So I think that's actually going to be even a better program. Even though they identified that as an effective program, I think we are going to enhance on that as well. And then number two, the review team identified an appreciation for the positive family interconnectedness amongst teachers and students. It was a while ago that we watched a video. It was a YouTube video, and every student can benefit from a champion. If you want to just Google that tonight. And Rita Pearson, who was a teacher, really identified the influences that staff can have on the academic performances and the experiences that kids have in schools. And so we continue to emphasize that and continue to try to expand on that connectiveness, because we know that relationships are important in all levels of elementary, middle school, and high school. So they said I had like 20 minutes, but I said I only need about 5. So if you have some questions, I'd be willing to answer them. Or
Dr. Gandhi, go ahead.
Sure. I know Mr. Dahlin referenced a potential or a change to our high school bell schedule for next year, and I know, Mr. Dahlin, we haven't had a chance to communicate this, but that's going to be the high school principal's board presentation later this fall that you guys normally do. So
yes,
there you go. So you'll be championing that.
can
So,
I come in shorts?
yeah.
Yes.
What I'm learning and listening to you and doing this for several years is a lot of these goals and I'll call them audits, academic and performance audits, continuously improve. So every time you hit a goal, we're going to change the goal line. And that is what our teaching staff and our leaders are up against every day. So continuous improvement is what our public expects and our students deserve. So
Yeah.
sometimes moving that line is kind of defeating for teachers, but we appreciate what you guys are doing.
Well, I think when you take a look at what happened this spring in mid-March, when we had to move the line and to experience all the things that we did there, and we had a great tech support from multiple people and categories there, and then our teachers stepped up, and so as things change in our educational environment, we have to adjust as well. And so I want to applaud our teachers and our support staff that went above and beyond the call of duty really to educate students this spring. And we learned a lot. In fact, if we have to go back into some format, we'll do some things differently again. So we'll always kind of constantly revise and change there. So.
Mr. Dahl, can you touch base a little bit on NIMSY and how you've seen that impact the students at North over the last couple of years?
Yeah, NIMSY is an acronym from the National Math Science Institute, and we were lucky enough to earn a grant that paid for lots of professional development for teachers, and it really was trying to increase the number of students enrolled and taking AP exams in math, English, and science. Even though it says National Math and Science, it also included English. And so we were, it was a 3-year grant, and they gave us some money for professional development. So teachers did some traveling. I think in the end it was like 8 to 10 days of travel and getting some professional development over 3 different stints. They had 4 days in the summer and then 2 days in the fall and 2 days in the spring. And then they also rewarded students who had qualifying scores of either a 3, 4, or 5, $100 for every AP exam. So it was quite an incentive. And they also gave incentives to teachers as well. 3, 4, or 5, you got an extra $100 per student. So they spent a lot of money here in Fargo by awarding this grant. And then the second year of the grant, South High added on. And then they gave us a 4th year. So we were real happy about that because it was supposed to be a 3-year. And now they're expanding it to a 5th year with some modifications. Won't quite have the same incentive packages, but there are some things that are built in that promotes the idea of kids taking those higher level classes. And, you know, we normally had between 60 and 80 AP qualifying scores. And so in the first year when they set the goal at 124, I said, oh, there's no way we're going to get that. and we got 155. And then the next year, they set it at 171, and I says, we're never gonna get that, jeepers, that's just, we got 197. And then they set it at like 215, and we didn't quite get it, but, I mean, it was.
See what I mean about the moving the goal line?
Yeah, but it was pretty exciting, because they gave over, the first year was over $15,000 to students, the next year was $19,000, a little over, and then the next year is a little over 20,000, but short of the goal, but still a nice increase on a yearly basis, and so we're fortunate, and it was good professional development too, and then we also hosted a summer, it's called Laying the Foundation Program, which was a state program, because this other one was a national grant, but the state program is an extension of that. And again, we had over 200 teachers from the state at North High receiving professional development across the curriculum, elementary, middle school, and high school. So, yeah.
And I think our 3 comprehensive high schools make up over 35% of the AP test takers in the state of North Dakota. So regardless of what your score you get on the test, there's significant research on there from a College Board report that says any student that just takes an AP class, regardless of whether they get a qualifying score or not, is more likely to complete 4 years of college before dropping out. So it is definitely we're really proud of your leadership and pride point for North High School.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Yep, you too.
We've got a parade of principals tonight. Oh, here we go.
Orienting. I'm Jim Keel. I'm the assistant principal at Woodrow Wilson High School, and I brought my colleague here, David Berkman, as well. As you may recall from, was it September, was the last time we were here presenting on Woodrow. The alternative high school, what does that mean? I've been doing this 3 years and I still don't have a great answer to that. What does it mean? Students come to Woodrow for a lot of different reasons. Train wrecks in life. Some just want to find a better fit, smaller community, whatever those pieces are. We try very hard to be the relationship school, as witnessed by our motto. We're a relationship school. So demographics, typical enrollment's about 150 students at any given time, which is a little bit misleading because we serve about 230 to 250 students during the course of the school year. Because we have an open enrollment, every Monday we start students, and when they graduate, or sometimes they choose other paths in their life. We serve a diverse population, a cross-section across the district, students who were at the other 3 high schools, or students who moved to town and wanted to try something different. What makes us unique? I think our size makes us unique. With about 150 students enrolled at any given point, we're able to access them. Our small staff gets to know the students. We invest heavily in the students, building the relationships, finding out what their needs are, and working with them individually to help meet those needs. We are a self-paced 6-semester program. What does that mean? It means that a student can start a class on any day of the week, and they work through the material, and they can finish on any day of the week. When they finish a class, they go see our counselor, they get another class, and then keep going until they reach the end point, which is graduation. Self-paced does not mean independent study, however. The expectation is the students attend, they get help from a highly qualified teacher in the classroom. So if you're taking a math class, you're getting help from the math teacher. Some of the challenges that we face, and I think this is not something new to hear, the increases in the social, emotional, physical needs of our students. We have a large population of students who are living paycheck to paycheck with their parents, a large population of students who are working on their own, living independently, trying to make ends meet and get the high school diploma at the same time. So lots of needs there. Another challenge is re-engaging. If you haven't been successful in another school and you come to us, how do we help them build the skills to be successful? So we have a number of strategies for that. The review happened in November. The review team came away with 3 very powerful practices. The emphasis on building relationships with students, they consider that an area of strength, which we would agree a very strong focus for us. Students generally comment that we are a very safe place. We work very hard to create a culture where we're all one large family. And what are things that we do to build that? Greeting the students as they come in the front door every day, getting to know them by name, getting to know a little bit about them. We'll have family meals, so we'll line the hallway with tables, and we'll do a lunch together, pizzas, or Thanksgiving meal, or a holiday meal. Really creates that sense of family. Students know that we're all there to help them, and whether that's their advisor, so every student is assigned an advisor, or just a teacher they like, or even the administrator or counselor, there's an adult in the building that they can find and they can talk to. So very powerful there. We work very hard to meet the physical, social, emotional needs of our students. Because we are self-paced, we are able to be somewhat flexible. Some students have late work shifts, so they're working the 3rd shift. And we can build their schedule around a little sleep between their 3rd shift and being in school. We're able to be flexible that way. We have what we call the Source, which is a food pantry and closet. We are very fortunate the foundation supports us. We make a monthly trip to the food bank. I load the back of my pickup with about 800 pounds of food every month. And we go through that every month. So helping our students meet those needs. We take clothing donations. Lots of gift cards are available through the foundation for our students to help the other needs that they have that may not be met. One of our goals last year was to increase the number of students accessing lunch on campus. And you can see there a 42% increase in that. Very powerful. More students eating lunch on campus means they stay on campus and they attend their afternoon class. We have a family room which allows parents, both moms and dads, to continue their high school education while taking care of their child. Last year I think we had 6 or 7 different children in the family room over the course of the year, and their mom and or dad were able to work on their high school diploma. So again, super powerful. Ann, who works in there, works with the parents, helping them build their parenting skills, showing them, modeling. She brings in outside agencies to help them access community resources as well. So very powerful. Our students know if they have a need, they can reach out to us and we will help them. During the COVID crisis, our counselor created a survey. She sent it out to all of our students, and it just asked, what do you need? And it had boxes they could check. Do you need drinks? Do you need diapers? Do you need formula? And so the students were able to go through the survey, click all the boxes, put their name in, and then during the course of the week, we would fill that order and have it available for them to pick up. Third powerful practice, efforts to create well-rounded students. We work hard with community service projects, so raking leaves in the neighborhood, but also working with our adult learning center. Many of my advisees like to go down and do what they call tea time. And it originally was set up as you're going to go down and drink tea with an English learner. They don't drink tea anymore, but they still call it tea time. And so they have conversations. Typically there's 1 or 2 prompts that they will work off of and have a conversation in English. Woodrow students get to learn about the life journey of an English learner. English learner gets to work on their English. So super powerful. Having the early childhood special ed downstairs, a number of our students want to work with young kids. They get that opportunity to go down and do some volunteer service for that. Part of our advisory program, we do give students credit for the advisory program, and so doing the community service helps them earn points towards the advisory credit. We have a program called Man Up, Man University program. It was started by one of our English teachers. He saw a need. A lot of our young men didn't have male mentors in their lives, and so it's a male mentoring program. They bring in guest speakers. Dr. Gandhi came and spoke. Lots of opportunities for them to build relationships in the community. see people being successful and learn about their journey. Students also are able to earn tokens for good service or deeds, and then they can cash those in for snacks as well. So those are some of the things that we're doing to build that community. Pass it over to David.
Tag teaming, we are alternative ed, so there are two of us here tonight. We wrapped up a day of summer school and both came over from Agassiz, and so you get both of us tonight. Under opportunities for growth, just very quickly on the bottom, this ELO and proficiency scales, you hear about the challenge from all schools in implementing, developing. Woodrow twist is that if you're a science teacher, you're teaching physical science, biology, chemistry, environmental science, and forensics. So you're developing all of those ELOs at the same time in the alternative ed self-paced setting. So an extra twist at Woodrow in terms of developing the district-wide ELOs that the team continues to work on. Other opportunity for growth, I know all four of our high schools do outstanding work with the students that are willing to come in through the doors. I think one of our challenges as a district, though, is, and was recognized in the site visit, what do we do for the 16-year-old plus? Compulsory attendance is no longer on the table. How are we going out and finding them? How are we identifying who they are? And how are we going and pulling them into school, inviting them into school? So an opportunity for growth is to continue some work we've been developing at Woodrow more richly in the last couple of years, which is answering that question. How do we get the 16-plus-year-olds who don't have that compulsory attendance piece, how do we go out to them and help them re-engage school? So questions from Jim's part or my part for Woodrow?
Hi, welcome. We've been having conversations about the physical structure of Woodrow and what there has worked well and helped you with your mission of building your relationships, and what's been maybe some features of the building that cause some problems or make that a challenge to build those relationships that you guys work so hard to do.
I'll talk briefly. Woodrow is in its second home. Those of you that have been in Fargo for years and years, Woodrow was the Woodrow building, the Woodrow Apartments. The move to Agassiz 8 years ago, one or two board members on at that time and knowing what was priority for that staff is, okay, we're going to leave this historic building, you're moving to another historic building. So it is a staff that is used to not a lot of moving. So in terms of what works at Agassiz, we do operate as one large building, 13 different programs that connects the connectivity with program leads, student to students, provides quite a bit of opportunity that we capitalize on. Jim mentioned the Adult Learning Center, working with New Americans. We also work with the preschoolers downstairs. They have goals written in their IEPs that they are working on, and Woodrow students go and volunteer with the preschoolers as well. Agassiz is the only building I've known for Woodrow, and it's been a good fit.
Go ahead.
I'll add to that it's really nice having windows and natural daylight. Alternative students struggle when they're in a cave. Important. And the old building, I think it's a great place to call home, and I think our students call it home as well.
We heard about problems, particularly with the sewer and stuff like that, and odors. That has no effect on any of the students or anything that's going on?
Well, one of the advantages of being on the third floor is that you're far away from most of the sewer issues. It has significant impacts on the early childhood area because they are exposed to that issue regularly. We do have our fitness center down there. There are some issues. Most of our students are used to overcoming some obstacles. I think from my experience with plumbing, and I've had lines collapse in two of the houses I've owned, When it collapses, then we have a major problem, because then we have a facility that's expecting 400 or 500 students on a daily basis that we won't have access to.
Go ahead, Rupa.
And I was just going to provide some context around Woodrow's placement in the Agassiz building. So if you're sitting in the Agassiz parking lot, looking at the building, not looking at the 1930s wing, but the actual Woodrow Wilson building, or the actual Agassiz building, you will see two levels. You will see a thin layer of brick between the bottom floor and the first floor, and you will see a thicker layer of brick between the second floor and the third floor. EDP and Woodrow Wilson are on the second floor and the third floor. The reason that you have that thicker layer of brick when you're looking at Agassiz is because the work that we presented at the last board meeting about creating an underground tunnel to be able to resolve some of the plumbing issues, that's already been done to resolve from the second to third floor. However, the issues that we're seeing at the ECSC program and where the foundation sits is on the bottom level floor for Woodrow, and that's where we would have to put in those extra costs that we had presented to create an underground tunnel, and we don't know what we're going to discover with the plumbing there.
So regardless of facility, because we are looking as a district at efficiencies and where do we use space, if programmatically, what is most ideal to pair with your traditional Woodrow Wilson education program? I'm hearing ECSE and adult learning. Correct me if I'm wrong. And is there anything programmatically that should be housed close to or in the same building as the traditional Woodrow program?
At the traditional Woodrow building, Adult Learning Center was housed with Woodrow Wilson High School. That's probably the most important pairing that we would want. We provide bridges into GED program, this very opportunity for growth of finding students who've disengaged. We do try to bring students, if they don't want to do high school, into GED programming. So there's that program in particular. I think also it's important for Woodrow to be the high school in the building, that there aren't two high schools like Welcome to North and Woodrow, Welcome to South and Woodrow. Davies would never have room, but Welcome to Davies and Woodrow. Since we serve those other three high schools, the students that they have, I do think it's important that we are our own unique high school.
Thank you, that's helpful. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Looks like Discovery's up next.
Hello. I'm Amy Herrick, and I'm principal/assistant principal of Discovery Middle School currently. Thanks for the opportunity tonight. I want to thank our school improvement committee for all the hard work that they did this school year and preparation for this visit, as well as the school improvement team that came to our school to visit that day. It's always hard to try to get all that information in just almost a half a day's snapshot of time. So this is Discovery. And I have a few notes here, so I'm just going to get those out. So I'm not going to read straight off of the screen, so you can kind of, I'm just going to ad-lib as we go here, but our enrollment, we're 1,103 students. We are the largest middle school, as you know, in Fargo Public Schools, and we are the second largest building in Fargo Public Schools in terms of enrollment. And if you notice, we have our 9 core teaching teams. We've got lots of teachers with experience. One of the things that we are going to be doing going forward for this 2021 school year is that our micro team in 8th grade is going to expand to be a full-sized 8th grade team. So that is going to be a change from 3 teachers to 4 core teachers. At this point in the year already, we have 19 new hires for the 2021 school year. 50% of our staff are coaching or involved in activities at our school. And I think that's a really good number because it shows the outside of the classroom that our teachers and staff have. In terms of our uniqueness, I talked about the size, but we also have the $16 million renovation that we just completed. And that really helped by adding a multipurpose room to assist with PE numbers. It also added space in our cafeteria. If you'd been in our cafeteria before, I can't even imagine being back to that size. Like, I can't even fathom what that even looked like. Maybe I've tried to put that on my mind, I'm not sure. Added to the band and drama spaces with addition to music and drama. We also added a secure entry to our building, as well as a sensory room and addition of a space for a level CED program at Discovery. We have an outstanding library and representation of fine arts at our school. Some examples of our library and fine arts would be that we host the Big Floody Music Festival each year at our school. Our music and visual arts department have collaborated together to have a Blue STEM ball at Blue STEM, which is a fabulous event. If you have not attended that, I strongly encourage you to do so. We have multiple author visits, and we have a wonderful maker space within our library area. So our challenges would be that we have a lot of new staff, we have that growing student population, and just kind of the wrap up from construction. So this poster is a representation of a poster that we have throughout our school, just so that you can see one of the pieces. This is my 18th year at Discovery, and I've been on school improvement from the day I started as a brand new teacher. And one of the things that we've continually worked on is trying to tie all the initiatives and try everything that we do so that it is purposeful and intentional into our school improvement plan, because we are doing a lot every day. And we want to make sure that everything we do goes back to the school improvement plan so that it's intentional and purposeful, as I had said. So you'll see that we have the different categories of student achievement, culture and climate, MTSS, and that ties with our mission statement as well as the FPS mission statement. So when we had our visit, the strengths that were pointed out to our school were that we had well-managed and supportive learning environments that were consistently observed at Discovery. And one of the things that we started this school year with the other middle level buildings was the phase one of the responsibility, safety, and growth mindset. And that was something we really dug into as a school. It really aligned kind of our practices, and that's something that we then furthered in terms of going into other areas within our school and taking those guidelines for success. So in the cafeteria, what does it look like to be safe? In the, for example, in the hallway, what does it look like to be responsible? Those types of things. So then those would create those procedures and practices that we could teach our students as they went throughout their day. And then that way it would be consistent throughout our building, which is something that we have always been trying to work towards, and PBS really seems to be giving that just a nice avenue for that. In terms of the positive relationships, we really make those positive relationships the center of our interactions with our students at Discovery, including our certified and non-certified staff. It doesn't matter if you are a teacher, if you're a counselor, if you are a paraeducator, custodian, whomever. When a child walks through the doors at Discovery, it's our job to build that positive relationship with them. And so I think our school does a very nice job with that. One of the things that we are going to look at doing for this upcoming school year is getting some students involved into our school improvement committee, because I think whenever we have these visits, we always have students represented, and the team meets with the students, and they always come out and they're like, this is what the kid said, this is what the kid said. Everyone's like, that is just, of course that's what the kid said, we should do that more, and then we don't, right? And so that's something that we are gonna look at, is having more of that student voice, bigger than student leadership, that type of thing, coming into our new school year. Another piece that we have is we have a variety of opportunities in regards to curriculum and extracurriculars. And something really exciting that happened at Discovery this year was that we piloted an enriched English program at 7th and 8th grade. And The students in enriched English saw a growth of 5 to 7 points on average in their measures of academic progress or MAP scores. And the increased interest in this class then resulted in a growth of 70 students, enrolling in this class to, for this upcoming school year, 140 students. Right? So that's a pretty big number. And so in the 8th grade, that was in the 8th grade, and then in the 7th grade, we had an additional section for the enriched English. So that was something that our English language arts teachers were very excited about, and I had the privilege of being able to come in and sit in on that class quite a few times, and it was just really fun to listen to the kids talk about the topics and whatnot. Another piece that is really a sense of pride in our school is the extracurricular and activities. And I know Mr. Schultes is watching tonight, and I told him that I would say his name in promise that he's watching, but that he's done just a fantastic job of encouraging our students to have a voice and propose clubs and activities that are of interest to them. So just this year, our students created particular clubs: the Cornhole Club, Pride Club, Anime Club, Dungeons and Dragons Club, the Just Study Club, where they just study. Beat the Mic Club, Drama Club, was in process prior to COVID, so unfortunately Drama Club did not get up and running. But again, that really speaks to the unique interests of our students and that they have a voice and are able to. It was amazing to see the kids that were in these clubs that maybe had not really found kind of their niche quite yet. And then they were like hardcore cornhole club attendees, and it was just so fun to watch how proud they were. In terms of our library, I talked a little bit about the Blue Stem ball, or about our activities, but the library has a maker space that every so often, I think it's multiple times during the week, they will do, it's a do-it-yourself space where students and staff can create. So this is a nice opportunity for students and staff to work alongside of each other in the maker space. They use a lot of 21st century skills. There's usually 15 to 25 kids in that maker space, including staff members as well. And it really depends on, what the project is. So for example, they did a do-it-yourself project with recycled materials, such as like earbud holders, CD coasters, those types of things. So that has really become kind of a hub in our library space. In regards to opportunities for improvement, having that protected time for PLC meetings, for staff to devote that time to use that framework, is something that our staff has talked a lot about. As administrators, we've talked a lot about, and the school improvement team that came to visit us saw that as well. And so we really are looking at creating that adequate time, that sacred time, and some of those processes to streamline just the effectiveness of our PLC time. One of the things that is going to be a little different this upcoming school year is that with the master schedule, core classes were able to have a common prep time, so that will give them additional time to collaborate during the school day. We haven't solved necessarily the issue for our encore classes, but we got to start somewhere, right? So in terms of that, looking at our PLC leaders from the district, we have quite a few that would be able to, they'll work with me in terms of coming up with some ideas for the PLCs and just looking at our processes that way. Communication has always been something that seems like it comes up when we have our school improvement visits. We have a big building. We've got a lot of new staff, a lot of new leadership, right? And so those were some of the things that kind of popped up with some inconsistent communication. The MTSS process, how is that handled, that protocol? And just how do we handle all of the different committees and teams and the communication and all of those different pieces. And so one of my goals going into this upcoming school year is to create a communication plan and to really dig into all the just different facets of communication that happen within a school building and a building of our size, when it comes to staff, when it comes to students, when it comes to parents, when it comes to the community. We have a lot of great things. We have a lot of great communication pieces, but we don't necessarily have a system to kind of do the checks and balances and measure the effectiveness of that communication. So that's something that I'm going to be working on with my administrative team. We're going to continue to work on that PLC data, the PBIS, MTSS A and B, just to look at how that's going to help just overall improve our school. Again, we have a lot of terrific things happening at Discovery, and I always enjoy when we have those visitation teams because it just gives your eye to something that you're already very proud of, right? And walking away with some ideas to improve. So that would be my presentation. Questions for me? I'll try to answer them.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I love the positive relationships that you did mention, and then involving the students as well, and then your communication. I think congratulations on your new role, and I think you'll be perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Discovery was the school I got to represent this year. Busy school all the time, it seemed like.
It is, isn't it?
Every time I was there, it was busy, just really busy.
Yeah.
And the students mattered. You know, what I loved about it was how Mr. Williams would stand outside when they left and, "Have a nice day." And if they didn't say, "Have a nice day, Mr. Williams," he'd, "Have a nice day, Mr. Williams."
Yes.
And so you could tell. And the last thing we got to do was, before the COVID, was to see the play. And that was an amazing musical. It was awesome. And the kids, like the data that you have here about well-managed classrooms, they were well-managed kids at the event. And when there was trouble, or could be trouble.
Opportunity?
Opportunities, yes. They were handled in a pretty cool, positive way. So, yeah, it was good stuff here. I see a lot of what you just said, what I viewed at there as well, to reinforce what you're saying.
One of the things that rung out for me, Amy, was your emphasis on helping students feel like they belong. And I think that more than anything, what our society is realizing right now is kids want to belong to something, and you're creating those positive opportunities for them to belong to. And I see that with my kids and my job too. So that is a piece that is very near and dear to my heart, because we know that kids that feel like they belong somewhere perform better academically and are more likely to be successful adults. So thank you for your emphasis on that. Well, wonderful reports. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Can I make an oh, Cheryl, go ahead. Yes, Cheryl.
I'm just going to end it. I get to push the button. Cheryl Jansen, I'm principal at McKinley Elementary, but I am a co-chair of this district committee as well. So I get to do the last slide. Thank you for your support. And if anybody had any other questions, wanted to make sure we offered that. You guys had great questions, though, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I need a break, so we're going to have a break. So it is, let's reconvene at 6:55. Thank you.
in the district. And I currently teach fifth grade at Bennett Elementary. And in the summer, I spend my time being the camp director for the YMCA camp, and I also run Camp Casey, which is a camp for kids that have cancer. So I'm very sad because both of those are closed this summer. So it's a lot of changes for all of us. So the report for FEA today is the educators are starting book clubs and other classes over cultural learning. And they are not being paid for this. They're not credit-based. It's just what teachers do for their professional growth. They want to be at the forefront of these discussions to help our community healing. They want to work with the cabinet and our leaders to help plan and create these crucial conversations, utilize our experts in the community to help with the planning and the authenticity and transformation for all. Our President Jennifer Mastrud will be meeting with President Nelson on June 21st to start discussions for liaison visits and communications within the school buildings. And then I guess we have a little bit of a concern on your vote tonight on the 5E GP7 changes. We feel that you're removing some transparency of the communications committee. We're worried that this is going to hinder and not bring about change and collaboration between the union and our school board. We feel being transparent is a vital role between the two of us, so please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gandhi, superintendent report.
Sure. Thank you. I just have a couple of things today. First off, at the last end of, we were still in the middle of the school year at our last board meeting, so this is the first board meeting we've had since the school year's ended, and I just want to acknowledge all of our staff. This has been, I don't even know the right words to describe this school year, but probably one of the most complex school years I've had in my career in education, just because there's been so much unknown information, and our staff has just risen beyond the occasion. Everyone, starting with our paraprofessionals to all of our office staff to all of our warehouse trade staff, and then obviously our teachers, our principals, and everyone else in between. So just want to acknowledge everyone and all of their work in transitioning to distance learning. Hasn't been easy, but it has been very successful, and I think exactly for the right reasons. It's because we have the right people in the right place, so extremely proud of all of their work. I wanted to talk a little bit about reentry planning and just give an update to the board and community and whoever else is listening. I know there's just a lot of questions about what school will look like in the fall. And unfortunately, as we've all experienced with COVID, information changes so fast, I can't give definitive answers. What I can give you is a process that we're going through. So earlier last week, we had our admin summit where we brought in all of the administrators in the district, and we started working through all of the information that we know right now. So there's federal guidelines in terms of gating criteria for bringing students back and what needs to be in place. Then there's state guidelines that North Dakota has adopted as well, and just different assurances that they are requesting for making students back. What we know currently is the parameters that they've given us for summer school and what's allowed and what isn't allowed, and just some of the work that we would need to be able to bring students back. So we identified basic pillars from everything of what does it look like when a student gets sick, to what it does a teacher get sick or an employee gets sick, to what does cleaning look like on a daily basis, to what does transportation look like. And we're working through different subgroups to identify reentry plans. Members of cabinet have identified at least 8 different days that we blocked out this summer starting next week, where we're just going to dedicate solely to reentry planning, and each of those dates are spread across about 2 weeks apart, so we can task out and bring in different people into the conversations, whether it's teachers, principals, whoever else, to work on reentry planning. So our target goal is to hopefully have some information about what reentry planning will look like, if all things considered, if there isn't any major changes to information by the end of July, and have some sort of reentry plan, whether it's a phased approach or not for the district. And then that would give parents and community members at least ample time before school starts in August to see what is this going to look like. our goal is also to make sure that during that time, at the end of July, beginning of August, we are giving an opportunity for staff and our community members to give us their voice on reentry plans. What do they feel comfortable with? What are their reservations? What is it not? So that is kind of the target that we are working backwards from now. I am also working with the North Dakota Council of Educational Leaders to talk about what reentry was going to look like across the state for all of our schools. So we're just kind of working with both of those projects at the same time. What I have here today, two organizations, AASA, the School Superintendents Association, and the American School Business Officials Association, put out just a general guideline, one-pager today that I thought was just interesting to take a look at, and it's titled, "What does reentry cost for schools?" And this is just a rough sample if you were to take a school district that has about 3,600 students, 8 buildings, and about 800 staff, which obviously we're much larger, and just take a look at average costs across the nation when you talk about the increase in transportation, sanitizers, what it could cost, potentially about $1.7 million increase. And I'm sharing this today for really two reasons. One is, as we work through the budget planning process, so we've already given a report to the board on how we are planning on sharing the CARES, or utilizing the CARES dollars that have been given to us, but just kind of want you to be mindful of some of the increased expenses that we're going to have to work through for next year for reopening schools. And this is just kind of a good one-pager as a sample. Obviously, not 100% of these numbers are going to translate to us because you have localized prices and things of that nature. But the second thing is that I might be leaning on the board this summer for some advocacy work, as well as superintendent and school board associations look at potential federal fundings or opportunities that we need, where we need federal or state funds during legislative session to reopen schools and to do it right, to make sure that we provide a safe environment for all our staff and our students. So just kind of wanted to share that. The last thing I would just wanted to share in my reentry plan is just a conversation around everything that's been happening in our community, specifically around race and equity. For those of you that have been watching the media, you might have seen my name or Fargo Public Schools' names being involved with some of the conversations that our community's experienced around what was a protest and then the One Fargo celebration. I just want to kind of share with you, for us, it's not a political conversation at all. Really what happened is after the protests, that Saturday night where we had the protests and then the subsequent rioting in our community, the following day was graduation. And then the week after that, I had an opportunity, and I was grateful to be at the table with some of our city officials to meet with the protest organizers and just talk about where do we have an opportunity for growth. We recognize that there is, whether it's systemic or institutional racism or the marginalization of groups of people, there's opportunities for growth where people's voices aren't being heard, and there's some of our students that are a part of that. We as a school district are committed to making sure that we are celebrating diversity and creating an inclusive environment for all of our students. Well, in our conversations with the organizers of the protest, one of their demands, and at that time requests, was what can we do to provide more education to new Americans in our community and make sure that they're being provided an opportunity to learn about their basic rights, and just provide them with more education about how to assimilate into our community given the structures that we have as well. That was probably the one area that really I think we can take the lead on and focus on that, and that was my commitment to the individuals then, was that I was going to put them in touch and will put them in touch with Jennifer Free, who coordinates our adult learning program. We serve about 1,200 new Americans. We currently have a program already in place that we bring in cultural liaison officers from Fargo PD and other individuals to inform new Americans of this is what society works, these are the basic rights that you have, but obviously if there's more opportunities that we have for growth, then we want to do that. As you may know, that I've already been spending a lot of my last couple of weeks doing end-of-year meetings with our building principals, just talking about what's the focus for next year and what do we need to move as a district. Across the board, in my conversations with our building principals, and then even in a conversation I had with President Mastert of FEA today, our district and our staff need and want support in professional development around how do we engage in these conversations around race and equity. We expect our students to have questions when they come back. we know that just the community that we serve, we have fantastic educators, but we don't have an educational system that is proportionately reflective if you're looking at just racial demographics of the students we serve. And we know that there's larger challenges with that and what the case may be. But regardless of how our staff looks and regardless of what our educators look like, everyone wants to make sure that our students have an opportunity to have that conversation around race and equity in our district and what does it look like to be able to support our learners. So we are going to be spending some, making sure that we're providing that opportunity for our administrators, our teachers, and everyone else to, how do you have those conversations and what does it look like? Secondly, for us, we also understand that diversity and looking at gaps when it comes to equitable access for education is not a one-shot solution, and there's a lot of things that we have to do in the district. So I think it's important for us to recognize that equity and inclusion is going to become a priority for Fargo Public Schools. And to me, words can sometimes be cheap. You showed that something's a priority when you put it in your budget. So as we build our budget this year, I think you will see a focus on professional development and other opportunities to, whether it's personnel or other opportunities to build out a system where we can make sure that equity and access and inclusivity is a focus of Fargo Public Schools moving forward as our community and our culture continues to grow and change. So that is it for my staff report.
Thank you. We have a consent agenda in front of us, and Mr. Paulson mentioned he would like to pull something. If the board would entertain that, maybe can you make a motion to do so right now? I know this isn't what we normally do, but
No.
I think it's reasonable.
I apologize because I walked in just when we were approving the agenda, and I had intended to ask to set aside 4D.
Okay. So what if we were to put that down with the other bunch of the policy revisions, like, can we make that 5G? Would that seem suitable?
It's fine with me.
Okay, we'll bunch those all together. So we have a motion on the floor to pull that item.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. That doesn't need a roll call, does it? Okay. All in favor, please vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? No. Okay, thank you for that request. On to the consent agenda with items 4A, B, and C. I would entertain a motion. Go ahead, Jim.
I move adoption of the consent agenda, items A, B, and C.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the items of the consent agenda? All in favor, please vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? No. Very good, thank you. Motion carries. Business section, item 5A, award of bids for the Explorer Academy, memo 123. Dr. Gandhi, would you like to lead that, please?
Sure, I will introduce it and then I will ask Mrs. Gap to come up if you guys have any more specific questions. But we issued our bid package 1 for the work at the Explorer Academy. Overall, we were fairly satisfied with the way where bids came in. However, there was one area, the masonry work, that was a concern for us. That came in well over bid, and I think our construction management team had reached out, I believe, to about 13 different companies or contractors, and we only got one bid back, and that was very high. So doing some work around that, it could just be the volume of work for masonry work. But aside from that, I would think that overall we're pretty satisfied, and we are looking for a motion to approve the base bids for the Explorer Academy's bid group 1 in the amount that's disclosed, $2,015,967, and direct administration to award these contracts.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to approve the base bids as presented. Discussion. We got David and then Jennifer.
Going over this, I had a question, and I see Blake is here. This bid that we have, does that include hiring a construction manager?
Am I on? No, I'm on. It does, and I went through that with construction engineers as well. So the relative portion of their fee in relation to bid group 1 is included, and then the remaining portion of that will come through as we get the second bid group out, which is coming out now or should be out for publication now.
I guess my concern is, I believe we all received an email earlier this year from Blake when a concern was expressed about the cost of building in Fargo versus West Fargo. And one of the things that Blake pointed out in that memo was that a construction manager generally charges between 5 and 8% of the cost. And he went on to explain that he had been, had taken responsibility for those duties. And I could see that, when you've got a $20 million building, that's a significant decrease in what it's going to cost the taxpayers. And I'm wondering why we continue to do this if our neighbors to the west are able to build without a construction manager. I don't see why we're spending this money. I want to be as responsible with the money that the taxpayers are having to foot the bill.
I will let Blake speak a little bit too. I think in regards to this project, it was in process already at the time when Blake was brought on. I think we can look at something different in the future on the next projects. But do you want to speak to that at all, Blake?
And while
As
Blake
is walking up, a little bit of context. We did, our business manager did used to be our construction manager, and then we moved away from that, but I cannot remember why. So.
Yeah, we haven't, since Dan Huffman was here, we have not had a business manager. I'm not, and neither was my predecessor, part of that construction piece, to the extent that Mr. Huffman was when he was here.
Sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
As Blake comes up, I can talk a little bit about this too, because we've had some conversations, and I had some conversations with Blake's predecessor as well. Our comparison with our neighbors to the west of the design build model, it is applicable when we are talking about some of the traditional settings that we're talking about. The Explorer Academy is a very unique setting. Not only did this project have an extremely aggressive timeline, but this is a very specialized project with a lot of different nuances, and I think that's why the Jim Free felt like going the route that we did was probably the best. West Fargo has done some projects with the construction manager as well. Just depends on the scope of each project, but for the most part, when it's a traditional school and it's kind of, I don't want to use the term cookie cutter, but we kind of know what we're doing because we've built a lot of buildings like that before. It's easier to go a different route versus a very aggressive timeline and looking at the first of its kind setting for level D facility in North Dakota.
And I don't have a whole lot to add to what Jackie and Dr. Gandhi had just said, except for that this was a plan that was already in motion prior to my start. I agree with using a construction manager on this project just because it is such a specialized area and it's such a specialized building. You want to get it right the first time. And I think that that's what's going to help guide us, getting it right the first time on this project. Now, is that saying on every project we want to do that? No. The next project probably won't happen that way. But I think that, this project is warranted just because it is so specialized.
Thank you, Blake. Jennifer.
Okay, so I have two questions. Maybe Dr. Gandhi or Blake could answer them. But so the construction manager that would be in charge of this project, do they have experience in building or managing these types of specialized buildings? And then I have a follow-up question to that too. I'll wait and ask.
Yep, and I don't know if you guys remember, but when we first brought the Explorer Academy to the agenda and we talked about the construction management company, we went through an interview process and looked at related experiences. The CM group that we have, they have experiences with Altru hospitals in Grand Forks, a lot of sensory gyms, multi-sensory rooms, and I can't remember everything else from their portfolio, but I can go back to my interview materials, but they were most aligned with the experiences to the project that we have at hand.
So, but not educational buildings, correct?
They did have educational buildings as well, and I think they, if I remember correctly, so they've done schools all around the state, I know that, but I also think that they've done some hospital sensory gyms, and I think they did the educational section of the Cass County Juvenile Detention Center as well, if I remember correctly.
Okay, and so my second question really is around, there were other areas highlighted in Blake's notes, such as doors, lighting, flooring, things like that. Would those be still areas, though, I understand this is a specialized building, but wouldn't there also be areas of opportunity that we should maybe reconsider?
I don't know if I understand your question.
So construction management was only one of the identified areas in terms of historically how or what we have utilized in our current buildings within FPS. And so lighting was one of them, the type of flooring was one of them, doors was another. And there was a significant difference in cost in those areas. And so in those areas, couldn't we still be saving money if we reevaluated and changed those processes?
I might answer that. The whole point of doing this is for those specialized items, the specialized lighting, the specialized sound barriers, the specialized doors that, like for nursing homes, and to cheapen the project at this point doesn't seem responsible to me for the kids. I understand the fiscal piece, but this is such a unique building. I'm not comfortable minimizing those products, but maybe the rest of the board is.
Well, I think I'm going to ask Blake to I think, clarify something here. So we're not looking at construction management independent of a section that's going to be subcontracted. Construction management is one delivery model for architectures, and part of that is who handles and manages the bids and the subcontractors that come in. So I'm going to ask Blake to kind of talk through that. I think, Jennifer, what you're saying is, can we look at the finishings or what our requirements are when we go out for bid? So, for example, masonry bid came in extremely high. So then we have to do a couple of things. We have to look at, do we redefine our scope of work and roll that out with bid project 2, or what are some other solutions? So I think that's one end of it, but that's independent of your service delivery model on where you're talking about whether or not you hire a construction manager.
Correct, and that's what I was saying, was construction management as one category, and none of those things, in my opinion, cheapened the building. It's just a different, lighting, for example, if we did lighting differently in our buildings, you actually get more light, that was shared in Blake's and at a lesser cost. So those is exactly what I'm talking about. So if we change what masonry we're using on the outside of our buildings, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not attractive looking. It just means,
Yeah, I'll have Blake talk to what we're doing with the masonry bids that came over, because there's some research that we're doing there. All of the other bids didn't come over. I mean, overall, they came in kind of where we're budgeted. And then we still have a bid package 2 that's going to come back, and then that's when our construction management team will go back and value engineer and take a look at all of our bid packages and say, where are we relative to the budget? So the budget process gets redefined every time. And after we go through this bids, and once these are approved, we still have a whole nother bid package going through. But I'll have Blake talk to each of those subcontractors.
Sure, you had a question as well.
It's probably more of a statement.
Okay.
Because I do feel like we have discussed much of this quite some time ago. And I was one that ended up going on one of the tours to the school in the cities, and know that, I mean, I expect that this be a hefty project in terms of cost. There are lots of finishes and requirements, you know better than I would, that need to be included, from what I understand after visiting with the experts, in order for this Explorer Academy to work the way that it needs to work for the kids. So I'm not interested in reevaluating fixtures and lighting. I feel as if what is being presented is what is needed to put that Explorer Academy together. So just wanted to reiterate that, because I feel like we've had this discussion, but some before you were here. So.
Yes. I kind of need to address it 2 different ways, okay? The construction manager, and the things that you don't see behind the scenes, is the amount of Zoom meetings and in-person meetings that we've had with the construction managers, the architects, BWBR, the electricians, the mechanical engineers, trying to, I won't use the term yet, value engineering, but to try to scale down this building a little bit to make it economical. There are standards that have to be followed for the building of this type. You know, the flooring, okay? In the classrooms, originally there was a rubber flooring that was called for in the classrooms. We switched over to VCT tile, okay? That was a savings. We are doing those things in there, but that's what the construction manager is for, is to do those things for us. To be able to go back to these vendors and get better pricing, to be able to go back to the masons and try to get better masonry prices. With the masonry prices ourselves, what we have now is we ask them to go back, and we're probably going to, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, I was in the car on the meeting when we were talking about this, so we asked them to go back and probably put it in the next package to rebid it. To try to get some more people involved. They need to go back to the drawing board and talk to more people again. Maybe talk to somebody that's not local to see if, who we can get out here to bid on it. I know there was a group up in Grand Forks that was interested. They didn't bid this time, but they're probably gonna bid next time. So that's the thing is, we need to have that competition in those bids, and that's what the construction manager is for, to try to make it more economical. There are things in this school that you just can't re-engineer, or you can't go, well, let's look on Amazon for something like that instead of what we actually have to put in this building. So it's kind of one of those things of, yeah, we wish we could do just what we do in the rest of our schools, but you really can't, because you need to conform to some sort of standards for this building to make it functional for the environment and for the kids that are going to be in this building. So that's kind of why, for one, we use the construction manager and all in this situation, and also why we're going back and keep rethinking what we're doing in this building. Scale down, or in some cases we have to scale up a little bit depending on what it is, but we are constantly reevaluating that in this building, just to make sure it's done right the first time.
Christy?
And I would like to, and I thank you, Blake, for that, reiterate based on Rebecca's comment, after visiting the two schools in the cities, they talked a lot about the features that they had in that school that were extremely important for the success of the school. And I know one of the features was when they do wainscoting, they do it at a certain height. Their sheetrock is too thick rather than a single layer of sheetrock. And when the wainscoting is higher up, it's because the kids otherwise are picking at caulking along the edges. So there's a lot of those things that are very purposeful to this environment, and that's why it's key. And I think it's important for this project to have someone, a construction manager who has dealt with some of these sensory issues. They're informed of the decisions and can help us.
Exactly, and even the ductwork in this building is twice as large as what you're gonna see in a normal school, just because it needs to be quiet going through that whole thing, and that's what that provides for us. So it's a lot of things involved in this, and we're constantly reevaluating, so.
And I would say that this is just, I want to remind board members, this is just the first phase.
Yes.
Those conversations are still coming. So we're not approving the final project tonight. We're approving this first, phase one. Rupak?
Well, I think there's just kind of a conversation, I think, just for us moving forward, that I'd like to know in terms of governance as well. We are bound by Century Code to go through a bidding process and which bids that we have to accept. And then we also have governance in our own governance structure with EL, where we are not going to overcharge or not be good fiduciaries of taxpayer dollars. But this is Blake's area of expertise and Jackie's areas of expertise as well. And we have to trust our trusted professionals that they're going to bring the best project forward that's going to meet the program that we've designed for the kids. And I think it's just a reminder of that governance structure. I don't think our board is designed to be questioning bids as bid packages come off for a project that's already been approved.
Hey, I don't see any hands. Anne Marie, would you like to take a roll call, please?
Yes.
Johnson. Knutson. Brian Nelson.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Rodenbiker.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ani.
Yes.
Benson.
No.
President Nelson.
Yes, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is business item 5B, bond resolution memo 124. Jim?
Yeah, I move that we approve the attached resolution and the district's business manager to publish an initial resolution for limited tax school building fund bonds in the legal newspaper of the Fargo School District.
Second.
I'll let you figure that out. Okay, motion's on the floor. Questions? John, go ahead.
Had we originally planned to self-fund this construction? This is new?
Go ahead, Jim, somebody?
Yeah, this came up at our last planning meeting, based upon a number of different factors that we've been looking at and discussing over the last couple of weeks or months, that might tie into using building fund dollars for something besides just this project, and the fact that right now interest rates are so low on the bond markets. Jackie came forward with a recommendation. She thinks it's probably fiscally in our best interest to bond for this project at this point in time. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, and Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, we're also going to be looking into whether or not we can qualify for the school construction loan program through North Dakota. And if that came through, then we'd be able to pay off those bonds early and really even get a cheaper interest rate with the state, because that's a 1% rate.
Jennifer, yeah.
Okay, so I'm glad you asked the question, John, because I've been thinking about this a lot since the topic came up at planning. And although I understand that interest rates are favorable right now, and one side of the coin allows us then to free up those funds for other potential projects. However, when I think about the potential projects that are in front of us and the balance, the healthy balance in the building fund, that is taxpayer dollars, and that is there to fund projects and can afford to fund projects as the Explorer Academy, and maybe even the other building that has been in discussion at our last meeting in terms of DO movement. And so then I struggle with, okay, even if it's a low interest rate loan, there is still going to be interest dollars that we are then passing on to the taxpayers. And we're then tying up again our bond rating. And now I also understand that a new building in terms of school, whether it's elementary or middle, is some time out. This could possibly affect that. And so I feel like we've established this savings account. And when I think about it, I think, okay, if I was saving to pay cash for a home, and I was lucky enough to have someone else maybe funding that, and then at the time that the home becomes available, interest rates are great, and I say, never mind, I'm going to go get a loan, and I'm going to charge you interest on that loan, even if it's a small dollar amount. But I have this money that I still have in this building fund that I've been saving for. It's still ours, right? It's still mine. I'm really struggling with how this is the right plan. So I welcome discussion around that, because I'm not sure that I think that this is the best plan.
Jackie, can you walk us through a little bit about how our bonding capacity is determined, and the work that you did with PFM to kind of get to this resolution, and then also the changes that we had in our 3 series of projects when our long-range facilities plan was originally drafted this past fall, which included a new middle school, and since that's not on the immediate need, what that shift has looked like.
Right, so I really started thinking about this as those long-term plans changed. We were very concerned initially with the plans we had in place prior that we would run out of capacity in our building fund. And the capacity in the building fund and the ability to bond is not based on our fund balance in that fund. It is based on the amount that we can levy and make payments on. So when it was determined that we were going to look at something other than building a middle school at this time, and some of the other items that are on the table for discussion in regards to some other facilities within the district, it seemed the appropriate time to look at bonding for the Explorer Academy before we can't. The resolutions that are before you allow us to also recoup costs that we've already put in place, should you decide to bond for this. And there's a period of time, because we have a 60-day protest, that if you choose to do this, we do have to get the ball moving now, or we won't be able to bond for it. And then I think that just places us in a different position in the future, depending on what we do with some of the other facilities that we've been discussing.
I don't quite understand, why would we not be able to bond? Could you explain that a little bit more?
Well, you only have so much time to issue the bonds, while we've already started a project.
Oh, okay.
Right? And so the first resolution that's attached actually allows the district to, put that out there. We have to do a protest period, but it would allow us to go back and say, we've already paid for architect fees and those types of costs. So those could be part of the proceeds then for the building.
I guess I'm having trouble understanding why we bother having a building fund if we don't use it. I'm not in favor of this. I can't see why I would go out and borrow money to pay for something that I have cash in hand to do.
And we certainly do have the cash to pay for the Explorer Academy. My concern is what happens after we pay that, because that will deplete that fund balance. And if we are having future or discussions even later tonight regarding this building, we may have to turn around at some point and look to bond for that instead. I just think it's timing of when things happen and our ability to issue if we choose to. But we did have the plan to pay for this out of fund balance and in the building fund, and we do have that capacity to do so. It would be what happens after that, that we would need to then take a look at.
I guess I'm in favor of the bonds, just for the fact that, yeah, we're looking at, new schools. We're looking at a lot of money that's going to just end up disappearing. And I understand that we've got that money in there, but really, don't we want to save some from when we do have to build, whether we have to build an elementary, a middle school, a high school, a new DO building? I think it's just not something that we should just deplete and just say, okay, here's a project, let's take that building fund and just take it all and just wipe it out and pay for it. So I'm absolutely in favor of this bond.
I've got John and then Jennifer.
What kind of rates are we expecting or hoping for from the market right now?
The last issuance that PFM did, which was not that long ago, now it's probably been a month since we initially talked, they were below 2%. I think the last one they had was 1.95 it came in at, so very good rates.
And just to follow up, what is our current bonding capacity for the district, and how does this impact that?
We still would have additional ability to bond, especially considering, maybe pushing that out now 5 years. I'm not sure, 7 years, right? Depending on what comes first in our needs. But the ability for the next bond should still be there.
And I would say, looking back in our history, this is how we managed that building fund so well. It's that proactive thinking. Yeah. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay, so a couple of things for clarification, because Jackie, you said our bond rating is not based on a fund balance, correct?
No, not the bond rating, our bonding capacity. Our bond ratings are based on fund balance, and mostly fund balance all funds, but in the general fund. So when you take down fund balance, then you can affect your bond rating and get a lower bond rating and hence pay higher interest rates.
Right, and our current general fund balance is close to 20%. So that's not, so if we spend the 24 million that's in our building fund, that's not going to negatively impact our bond rating, correct?
Yes, it could.
It could. Okay, and then you said our capacity, isn't it like, I remember reading this, aren't we close?
We were close to capacity if we were going to bond $60 million for a middle school. That was going to push us to our limit.
But if we bond for this project and then a new district office project, doesn't it do the exact opposite, that it makes the future projects more difficult to bond for, because now you've taken capacity, you've taken that bonding ability?
I wouldn't
dollar amount.
suggest that if we choose to do something with the district office that we would bond for that. That would be paid.
We would or wouldn't?
We would not. That would be paid out of fund balance.
So if that's paid out of fund balance, like 7 million, and this is 12 million, we'd still have money in our fund balance.
Correct.
So I still
Or
don't get it.
for other future needs. So let's say that we do relocate the district office, we still have to find homes for some of those other programs. And that would need to be discussed as where that would be, and there would potentially be costs to remodel even existing facilities if we were to move some of those programs.
If I may, but our building fund is still growing.
Correct.
So I'm still struggling with why would we do this when we have the money?
Well, if, in my mind, if we do not bond for this, I think we have to take a hard look. If we do choose to do something with the district office, we may have to bond for that. So it's a matter of what comes first and what comes second and what the plans are. And with the urgency of being able to issue bonds for the Explorer Academy, the time is running out. So if we don't issue bonds for that, the next item may need to have bonds issued, whatever that may be in the future.
And I think it's also important, I know, because I hear some of your conversations in just terms of the philosophy and what the impact is, but in a conversation such as this, we have to drill down to the actual numbers as well. The project for the Explorer Academy is right around $12 million. That is the number that we have in our building fund, so you'd be taking that down all the way. We were gonna reach our bonding capacity if we bonded for a $60 million middle school. Our building fund, we may have dollars left and it'll still grow, but Jackie, do you remember at what rate when we expected that building fund to go all the way down, what rate it was gonna grow at again?
I need to understand your question.
Or at what rate do we expect our building fund to grow back if we were to spend it all on the 12
It will
million?
grow equivalent to the rates that property taxes increase, so roughly 4%.
Yep.
Clarifying question, did I hear you say the balance in that fund is 12 million or 24 million?
I thought it was right around 12.
There's a large bond payment that has been being held for the last 3 or 4 years that will be coming out this fall out of there. And that had to do with all of the crossover refunding and everything that we did when we built EdClap. That's been held in trust, but that will be coming out.
So it's 24 now, but after that
It will be going down. Yep, I feel like it's an $8 million payment but I would have to double check on that for that term.
So for me, I trust the administration. I've worked with the planning committee on all of this, and as a board, we're authorized to levy a building fund every year, and it's up to us to utilize the taxes as we see fit. So for me, I think it's, we're utilizing the monies, and administration and cabinet is recommending this, so.
There's a clear consensus on the floor. Jim, go ahead.
Just a couple of things. First
Mike.
of all, I want to make it real clear.
Jim?
I want to make it real clear, we use the building fund always, for every project. We make the payments on all of the outstanding bonds. The vast majority of them come out of the building fund. So the reference that, well, we've saved this money, why aren't we using the building fund? The building fund will be used to pay these bonds. The question is, do we believe an interest rate of 2% today on 12 million is going to be a better bond for us to issue than one in the future, whether it would be 7 million for a DO, 20 million for an elementary building? My perspective is we're never going to see a bond rate this low again in terms of an interest rate. So if we have the capacity to borrow 60 million or so right now, and we use 12 of it here, we still have capacity for 48 million. We still have the actual building fund balance, and we have now taken advantage of the lowest interest rate, quite frankly, that we've probably ever seen since I've been on the board for issuing a bond. I think it's the fiscally responsible thing to do when we know for fact that sometime in the next decade, we're going to be putting out a whole lot more in bonding as we build elementary, secondary buildings, and most likely at a much higher interest rate. So I actually think this is the fiscally smart thing to do, but either way, we're going to have to do something because we just approved the letting of the bids that we need the money to pay. So we either have to pass this tonight, or they're going to start writing checks right out of the building fund, one of the two.
Brian?
Or it's possible we could get a school construction loan at 1%.
And pay it off, yep. David?
Just a question, is there a maximum amount that can be in the building fund?
No. And just so you know, we do plan to pay for the plumbing that we need to do at Agassiz will be paid out of building fund as well. So I think that's what Jim was kind of getting at, that we do use that fund all the time for projects. We paid for our secure entrance projects out of the building fund, and we will continue to do that as well as those come to the table.
Knudsen,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbacher,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
President Nelson.
Yes, motion carries. Next on the agenda is a possible executive session, and it seems like we do need to enter that. So we will need a couple minutes, unless I'm wrong.
You'll need a
Okay,
motion.
we
to
need a
enter.
motion to go in executive session. Christie beat ya.
Yep. I move that we go into executive session for the purpose of negotiation strategy as permitted under North Dakota Century Code 44-04-19.1.
Okay, motion's on the floor. Do we need a roll call? No, procedural. Okay, all in favor of entering executive session, please vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? No. Okay, now we'll need a couple minutes to get the room set up. Okay, we are back into regular session of this meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. Jim?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move to direct our administration to make a formal offer of $7.3 million for the Western States Life Building that is currently owned by RDO. And upon acceptance of that offer by RDO, to then list the former Red All Warehouse Building, which is the current home of the district office.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Go ahead, John.
I'm going to support this. This is a really unique and almost perfect fit opportunity for the district. We've outgrown this office. This office needs quite a lot of work done to it. The building that RDO currently occupies is going to be essentially move-in ready. We'll do some security upgrades, I'm thinking, but overall, fit and finish, including office fixtures, are coming with this. It's a great location. It's right next to our Hawthorne Elementary. If we are able to sell this building, the ending price is going to be really affordable for the type of buildings that we need. The pricing is much more affordable than building new. I think a much better idea than investing that money into rehabilitating what we can here. And even if we try to rehabilitate it, it's clear from our discussions that we're really out of space. And so for all of those reasons, I will be supporting this motion tonight.
Go ahead, Rupa.
I just want to clarify for the record that the motion on the floor would be the 7.3 inclusive of the furniture.
Yes.
Okay. Jennifer?
I'd like to amend the motion by adding to the end of, it was upon the sale of, or upon the agreement, negotiated agreement, then the motion, sorry, it's not word for word, would be to list the district office. I would like to add in as, to also list the Agassiz building to that motion.
You need a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion on the amendment only. Go ahead, Jen.
So I'm assuming if we were to list the Agassiz building, it would have a closing date like 4 or 5 years out? And like exactly who would be the buyer for that? Because we have no plan and no ability to have a plan to next January have all the programming out of that building. So I'm not against listing the Agassiz building, but if you put it on the market 4 years before somebody can actually occupy it or tear it down, I guess maybe they'd buy it and we could rent it back from them? Is that what you're thinking?
You can put exclusions or provisions into a contract for sale that would say you have a lease tenant for X number of years. And so if you do think it's going to take 4 to 5 years, we should be able to move out within, 3 to 5, I believe it was stated earlier in earlier conversations. So, yeah, you'd have to honor this lease for X amount of months or years.
I guess I'm not comfortable not knowing what we're going to do with Woodrow Wilson and the adult ed. I don't know. There's no plan there.
There was one presented at planning for possibilities of where to relocate every single thing
And where
in
would
that
that be?
building. There was, within Blake's documents for Woodrow and adult ed, there were conversations around using our existing capacity within the buildings that we currently have.
What I remember is that somebody said possibly, didn't they say like Fargo South, you could maybe put it there or something like that, but that wasn't something that they wanted to do, or it just seemed like, listening to the principal tonight, they wanted their own identity. They don't want to be within a building, was how I read that. And so when I heard that during planning, it just kind of stopped for me. It's like, oh, great, now what do we do for Agassiz? You know, what are we going to do there?
Yeah, I've got Rupak and I think David.
Brian, I think your interpretation of the events is absolutely correct. When we did the original analysis on all three buildings, we had talked about what are potential spaces that all the programs from Agassiz can go. There's three programs that currently would not move out if we were to move forward with this motion. That would not come out of, that would not move to the RDO building, which would be Woodrow Wilson, Adult Ed, and ECSC. At the time, we had said South High School could be that option. Since then, we've met with the administrations at Woodrow Wilson, and they've shared exactly what they shared with us today. There is a push and a complete value, justified value of Woodrow Wilson keeping their own identity and not being located on the same campus as another campus, just because some of the students that they serve are students that were not successful or the right fit for them wasn't the comprehensive high school as well. So what I would encourage is that if we are moving forward with the RDO building, kind of like we've discussed in the past, let task administration to come up with what the best decommission plan would be for the Agassiz building, and let us put together what we think would be the best long-term solution for ECSC, Woodrow Wilson, and Adult Ed. You heard today that Woodrow Wilson has only moved twice in their program, and they moved into Agassiz. If we want to talk about this conversation from equity and access standpoint, I think we need to flip the script a little bit, and we need to give Woodrow Wilson the chance to say, tell us what your dream school is and what's perfect for you. Not let's just push you somewhere where we do have room, and I think we just want the ability to do some of that work. So yes, we did originally say that South High School could be an option because of the space there. That was not counting, depending on what happens with boundaries, which is still in flux, but that was also prior to us talking to the Woodrow Wilson administration and them telling us, it's really important for them to have their own identity.
Okay. David, did you have your hand up? No, not right. Okay. Rebecca?
I feel I am not in support of the amendment. I feel as if it is a bit premature right now to be adding Agassiz on formally onto this motion, but I am in favor of the motion for the reasons that have already been stated. I see it as a financially responsible move for the district, especially once we get to the point where we will be offering up this building for sale. It makes the purchase of that RDO building even that much more affordable. So I am supporting the original motion. I'm in favor of and would understand that if the motion passes and this ball gets rolling, that administration will be putting together a plan to look at what really needs to be done with Agassiz and where those programs should best be located, and that information will be presented to us to consider.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion on the floor, which is the amendment? I've got Christy and then David.
Just wanted to say, I think the discussion needs to happen about Agassiz, but I would agree with what Rebecca just said is, I think it's a little bit early because of the movement of Agassiz. I think we need to be transparent in our working with the building administration. And I like your idea of, what's your dream school, and then how can we best suit the needs of those kids that are at that school?
David?
And I guess I understand what's being said about the timing of this and whatever. My concern is we were presented with a monstrous bill for the sewer problems that exist at Agassiz. And if that building has ceased to serve our purposes, I want to get rid of it as soon as possible so that we're not throwing more money into a structure that needs to be dismissed.
And I don't disagree with that. The sooner the better, but the timing needs to be right from my perspective. Brandy?
Yes, and that's one thing he did say about the school, though. I mean, that sewer is not interrupting like the kids on the second and third. So, I think we just go ahead with our wanting to do the RDO building and then get rid of this one, and then we'll move forward with the other one. I think that's a great plan.
Okay, we have an amendment on the floor. Anne Marie, would you like to call the roll on the amendment?
You bet. Brian Nelson.
No.
Paulson.
Yes.
Rodenbacher,
No.
Ulrich,
No.
Ani,
No.
Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
No.
Knutson,
No.
President Nelson.
No, motion fails. Back to the original motion. Discussion on the original motion. Roll call?
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbacher,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
No.
Johnson. Yes. Knutson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
President Nelson.
Yes, motion carries. Next agenda item is business item 5D, implementation plan for Clara Barton neighborhood. It looks like we have an audience member here to help us through that conversation, but Dr. Gandhi, if you'd like to kick it off.
Sure. In the last couple of board meetings, administration was tasked to create an implementation plan to implement boundary changes for students that reside in the Clara Barton neighborhood east of University for them to attend Ben Franklin Middle School and then subsequently North High School. Administration is presenting to you today that implementation plan. The reason that this implementation plan is time sensitive is because the current document in front of you allows for two things. Well, there's two important components to this document. The first one is the option for students that would be impacted in the middle of their middle school career to have that flexibility to attend their new school early so then they can complete all 3 years of their middle school at Ben Franklin if that's something that they choose to do. And in order to do that, that is something that would take effect this upcoming school year and would need communication essentially now. You see Principal Martin here. He would have to make adjustments to sections, student schedules, things of that nature if that's going to be an option individuals would want to utilize or families would want to utilize. So our plan, and I really want to delineate between two things. There's phase-in and there's grandfathering. So our plan our recommendation does allow for phasing in. Phasing in means students that are going to have to change next year because they're in 7th grade have the option this year to go to Ben Franklin so they can do all 3 years there, and we would provide transportation for them to do that. We're using the term grandfathering to mean, do you allow students to go to their originally zoned school solely because they had a sibling that went to that school? So a student that's currently in that neighborhood would not go to Ben Franklin and North, would go to Carl Ben and South because they had an older sibling that went that route. Our recommendation is no. We know that that might lead to one sibling that went to one school and another sibling that went to another school, but we have faith in all of the quality of all of our middle schools and high schools and Fargo Public Schools. And I think it's something that our students are resilient, and I don't think it's the biggest detriment if your older sibling went to one school and you're zoned to another school. So we were not looking for grandfathering as it relates to that concept. So that is something that's presented here in the implementation plan. Dr. Gross, myself, and Mr. Martin are available for any other questions that you may have.
Yeah, I'll get us started. I'm going to move that the Board of Education approve the implementation plan for the secondary attendance boundary change for the Clara Barton-Hawthorne Elementary School neighborhood to begin in 2021-2022 school year as outlined in Memo 120.
Second.
Okay, motion's on the floor. Go ahead, Brandy.
I do have a question. It says fall of 2021, so we're saying that on this one, RUPAC would be that they would start in the fall 2021, so they would all then move to Ben Franklin, right? So it wouldn't begin this fall, you're saying next year?
Correct. So page 10 is going to be your best diagram. And this is allowing for the phase-in, so we would provide transportation for students that wanted to utilize that option this year. So it'll tell you what grades get phased in. But the boundary changes would be implemented the fall of the 2021-2022 school year.
Okay, before I
Thank
call
you.
on Brian, I will say too that I did vote against this the last time I came to the board, and quite frankly, it was a surprise to me and I didn't have enough information. to support it. This time, I feel that this has been presented well, and now I get the strategy of having a second reading because this gave us an opportunity to get a lot of parent feedback and family feedback, which were very positive. That's the first time we've ever looked at a boundary change, and that's been positive. I think I only had one negative comment, but the rest of them are overwhelmingly positive. In fact, can we do it next year was what I was hearing.
That was my question. That's
Okay.
why I was going to say, but I understand the whole phasing thing. That's why there was one person that did
One.
say,
Mhm.
can we start it this year, please?
Yeah. Everybody wants to hang out with you, Shane. Brian?
Was there, when I was reading on page 10 there, was that a misprint there where there's two 22, 23s? Should have been like a 23, 24 and a 24, 25?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
Okay. Rebecca and Jennifer.
Well, I support this plan, and yes, have received positive feedback from parents. Received positive feedback from parents quite a few years ago when this very similar issue came in front of the board, really. I just want to say that I am a family that was affected by the boundary change the last time. My girls are now juniors at North. We chose to send them to Ben Franklin in 6th grade, which was the year before the official plan really started, which is kind of like what we're talking about here. And so officially, their middle school career at Ben Franklin would have started in 7th grade, but it was an opportunity that the district allowed, and the school said it would work for the girls and other families who wanted to send their students or their kids there for their 6th grade so they could have their whole middle school career, at one middle school. And so we chose to do that. One of the reasons that I think it worked well, and I'm speaking specifically for our family, but there were some really careful practices, I would say, that were put in place, I think, to help the students that were then 5th graders get to know a little bit more about Ben Franklin. Because a lot of them did grow up thinking, well, gee, I'm going to go to Carl Ben and I'm going to go to South because this is where I live or because an older sibling went there. This is just what's been talked about at school, kind of. We're going to be Bruins. I think that, the careful planning in terms of discussions with students and kind of showing them some different opportunities that were available at Ben Franklin. There were a couple of trips even that kids could take up there. Now, it might be a little bit different right now with COVID. I don't know what kinds of opportunities we can have. But I would just encourage, and I'm sure I see the communications plan that's been put forth here, but just as much as we can do to help those students that would be transitioning up there to get to know that school a little bit better. I would just encourage that. And I know we'd be thinking about doing that. I just wanted to voice this because we're a family that went through this. And I'm also thinking back to Ms. Folden's comments earlier this evening about the students and the families at Clara Barton-Hawthorne. Let us be together. Thank you.
I think I have Jennifer, David, and Rupak, unless you want to answer any of those things.
So mine is an answer to kind of Rebecca's comments, and I just want to kind of share with the board some of our context around this conversation. When this motion was brought to have administration create an implementation plan, it wasn't time sensitive, but there's a reason that we brought it today. In our original conversations with our secondary principals, we were not going to suggest providing for transportation for the parents that want to opt in early. We were going to say you always have that option and we'll allow that, but parents need to provide their own transportation solely because it is going to be a big lift on Ben Franklin and a lot of work that they're going to have to do. Mr. Martin has agreed to put it in, and the reason that we're doing that is if this is part one of 2 boundary changes that are going to happen, we think that just for equity and access, we should make sure that whatever we do here, we do on the south side of town when we're looking at that part 2. And we know that just because of those schools at the rate that they're growing, we would probably say we want to get students to implement faster if we can and provide that transportation. So that was the reason that why we're suggesting that today. So I just wanted to give that context. So as you look through this, we're hoping that what you do here is if there's another boundary change down the road, you apply the same principle. So we make sure that we're treating all the families the same.
Jennifer?
Thank you. So along the lines of what we heard earlier and what we've heard from people time and time again is that keeping neighborhoods together, elementary students together is something that they would prefer. There is a carve-out in this plan. I'm curious if the board would consider or talk about including them as moving to as a whole, as the entire elementary, rather than leaving them split and then giving them the option in reverse to stay where they're at, and what that could look like. Because I really think that, honestly, a true feeder program would help sustainability in terms of numbers in this district if we did it across the district and made all of our 4 elementaries that are split a true feeder. So I still believe in that idea. Second, I have significant concerns with what you had shared earlier, and that was actually my number one question was going to be around splitting families in terms of if you've got now a 9th grader and a 10th grader and one goes this way and one goes that way, you're asking families now to have 2 cars or 2 different transportation method. I just feel like you're putting a big strain on families by splitting them like that, that I can't quite wrap my head around why we would do that.
So you're talking about if I think it's a matter of, it's a boundary change. What are we willing to prioritize and what is it, the goal that we're trying to accomplish here? Well, last time when you did boundary changes in 2014, I believe, and we allowed siblings to follow their older sibling and carry that out, we did not get the impact that we were trying to do by reducing the overcapacity in those buildings. When you allow for that grandfather clause in that sense, you're going to have to do that. Yes, it might be, we might have students that their sibling went to one school and they go to another school. And I understand that that's not an ideal situation, but I don't think there's going to be any boundary situation that's going to check every box. The purpose of the boundary changes that we're recommending here, it is my understanding that this motion was made to capture the students that are going to Ben Franklin and North High School, so we can make sure that those buildings are getting the students that they need to keep their programs viable. But the second intent of that was to free up the rooms at Carl, Ben, and South, so we can bring students where we're struggling on the south side of town with that enrollment goal. So if that is a problem that we're trying to solve, then that is the focus we need to have. And allowing for grandfathering is not going to allow us to solve that problem, and we have data to show that.
That's actually what I was going to ask for, is that you have data to show that, because in the last boundary change, we were told that the numbers would provide for programming to be equal across the district. And second, it may have taken longer, but they did achieve the number. So it might have taken 5 years versus 3 if you split up families, but they got there. They got the number that they were going for. It just took a while. And so I think the same would be true here. You would just need to allow for an additional, whatever that number is, and based on the most recent projections, conversations we've had, any sort of, building needs is going to be pushed out at least that far.
David?
First of all, I supported this boundary change right away, and the fact that the people west of University would continue to go to Carl Ben made sense to me, just because of their proximity to Carl Ben. But then in listening to Mrs. Folden, when she said, they all wanted to be together, I wonder if, are there provisions being considered that would allow any of those kids west of University to go to Ben Franklin if they chose? And I think that Jennifer makes a lot of sense with what she's asking about the grandfathering. If you had a ninth grader involved in basketball who now has to go to south for practice and games and whatever, and then you've got a 10th grader who's going to be going to north, that does seem to put a lot of pressure on parents. And it wouldn't appear that the numbers would be so significant that they would make this impractical.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Just so everybody's aware, and I have no problem if we decide to take the neighborhood west of University and have it go to Ben Franklin automatically too. But right now, any family in Fargo could put in a request to attend Ben Franklin, and I'm guessing it would be approved because they have the space, and especially if they're coming out of far south Fargo where we're at capacity, that's a win-win. So, and the same is true for somebody that, and I didn't quite understand your ninth grader going to south and the 10th grader going to north. It would be flipped around, but that's okay. The same thing's true there. If I've got a 10th grader over at South right now, and I've got a 5th grader at Carl Ben or Clara Barton next year, I can always petition and see if they'll let me send them to Carl Ben and then on to South. My guess is they're going to say no, because we're going to have a full building at CBE. But just remember, we still have the petition process for people.
Well, I'm going to try to call on some people that haven't been doing all the talking. And so, Dr. Gross, can you please step up?
Well, thank you. I think two of the questions that are on the table right now or being discussed right now is the area to the west of University Drive. And one of the reasons that I believe is not part of the original motion that was passed is Carl Ben Eielson is actually in that spot of our community. So you would have students right across the street who then would be reboundaried or repurposed to a different part of our community. So in that area, there are about 75 students, K through 5. So just so you have a sense of how many students we're talking about. But again, Carl Ben Eielson is physically located in that portion of our community. The second thing that's been talked about is grandfathering and the impact that it has on enrollment trends. If we go back and we look at, for example, Davies High School, and we just look at August enrollment data, in 2015-16, we started the school year at that school with 1,218 students. Then there was a boundary change with grandfathering. The next year, we had 1,221 students. It increased. So even though we changed the boundaries, we had more students there because we really didn't impact the families other than families who just newly moved into that area or that part of town. And then we can continue to see that number increasing year after year. So the impact of a boundary change was dramatically reduced because of that grandfathering. And really the only people who were impacted were anyone who came in and bought a home or rented an apartment in that part of our community.
Thank you. And I am starting to sense a consensus here. I can't remember who had their hand up. No, did Jennifer again? Okay.
So two things. Yes, you can petition, but then transportation would not be offered under the current rules. So that would not be provided for that family if they were approved to go to Ben, which again, can be problematic. Two, the analysis that Bob just shared, that was 5, 6 years ago now. It was right at the beginning of my time, and that was part of the projection. We knew, Bob, that it wasn't going to impact Davies for like 5 years, that boundary change, correct? In terms of significant numbers.
When we originally presented it, we meaning administration,
Yes.
we did suggest it without grandfathering because we wanted to have a larger, more quick impact in that area so that we'd have larger capacity into the future.
But then you provided the information that showed us with grandfathering. what it would look like?
We were able to show 1 year out. We did not know what was happening in that community with the number of lots that are being built on and how quickly that part of our community has grown. But by grandfathering, we dramatically increased and stretched out the number of years until we would actually see an impact of that boundary change.
You have them for this one, correct? For this proposal? If you included grandfathering in this particular proposal that is in front of us?
I do not have that data.
I thought you said you had that.
No, sorry, I was referencing the impact when we did the boundary changes. And we don't have the data of if we were to allow grandfathering, how many students that is. I don't have that information right now.
David?
When I mentioned earlier about the people west, I was referring to petitioning. And and that's why I said, would there be provisions? Because I know that you can petition, but I know in a lot of cases, petitions are denied, and I don't know how many people Mr. Martin is prepared to take. So that's all I meant by it. I understood that they could petition. I just wondered if there was a good chance, at least, that their petitions would be accepted.
If we keep the group closest to Carl Ben, so west of University Drive, we're not going to be able to say, and I have to remind myself that we're not keeping that elementary school together. So for the most part we are, but there is a notch that we're carving out. So, I mean, I see that it can work both ways. I see that we can support the plan that's here in front of us, and if there are families that want to petition to go north, that will likely work out. I see that if we included the whole group, the whole Clara Barton-Hawthorne group, and moved that group north, that also those families, actually any family, could petition. And I don't know what the decision would be there, but might be that they'd be able to stay at, my guess would be that they'd be able to stay at Carl Ben and South because the current plan here has them going to Carl Ben and South. So there's room for them right there currently. So I guess the question would be is, do we want to say that we're really keeping the entire Clara Barton-Hawthorne boundary group together or not? Because I think it can work either way.
While I completely value if we are able to have the option to keep families together, administration has never been tasked to come up with a plan to not have any split elementary schools. We have 4 split elementary schools in our district, and if we were to move into an option or a board were to task us to come up with feedback on what would happen if we no longer had any split elementary schools, there is going to be some really difficult conversations that we would have to have, specifically around maybe disproportionate socioeconomics at some schools versus the others, what that does to our secondary buildings in terms of enrollment, just a lot of other factors. So I think the problem that we were trying to solve was never not having split elementary schools. The problem that we're trying to solve is how do we alleviate the growth that we have on our south side of town. And that was the purpose behind these boundaries I brought here. So just want to keep the board's perspective of why are you voting for what you're voting today. Yes, there's going to be side effects, and there's always side effects of every boundary change. But I implore you to keep what is the problem that you're trying to solve with this boundary change at the forefront.
Thank you. At one of our last virtual meetings, that was the second proposal. I asked for a true feeder system, so we do have the data, and actually that data is more favorable than this in terms of socioeconomics. So a true feeder system would put all of our elementaries back together, which is what this community has asked for in neighborhoods time and time again. And it does also, when we talk about what problems are we trying to solve, long-term, in terms of long-term sustainability. This versus carving out random here and there to bus students from one direction to another. This provides better long-term stability and a true feeder system. We have all the numbers, just so you all know. I've seen them.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Anne-Marie, did you have something else you wanted to say? I'm so sorry.
Just to add to the conversation and some of the things that have been said, one of the things, when you guys are talking about perhaps having that area west of University go north, one thing that you guys talked about at your retreat a couple times ago was not having families drive past a school to attend another school. And if you change the attendance boundary of which the school is in, you would be doing that. One other thing that I would look to Bob to see if I'm totally wrong, but we changed boundaries in 2000. The boundaries took effect in 2016 for secondary, correct? We allowed a grandfathering clause. We would still be having that grandfathering clause in effect now because we allowed it at the middle school and the high school level. Right, Bob? So we would still have families going to Davies that could have moved because we allowed that to transfer all the way up through, correct?
That is correct. So there are still families today who are taking advantage of the unique petition that was created and put into that transition plan.
It took effect in 2016, and so we will still have that for even a few more years if you think of that, 7-year cycle. So that is a little bit more deeper into the why a grandfathering clause, just an automatic grandfathering clause, isn't recommended by administration. Rodenbacher,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
No.
Johnson. Yes. Knutson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
President Nelson.
Yes, motion carries. Okay, gang, we are going on 3.5 hours. My blood sugar is really low. Either I'm going to have to depart and Vice President Rodenbacher is going to have to take over, or maybe at the wishes of the boards, we can postpone the remaining items until the next meeting.
Yes.
Do we need to vote on changing the agenda?
You should, yes.
Okay.
Actually, I'm gonna move that we adjourn. No. I just made a motion. Somebody could second it.
Do we need a roll call on that? Okay. I also, while she's looking that up, we do have a canvassing committee. It should be able to wait through the next meeting. It is.
Yes,
there-
and we have another meeting on the 26th.
And it automatically works. It's just a matter of who would chair it. That makes sense.
I have a question. Was there a second to the motion?
Yes.
Do we have to vote, did we vote on that or no?
You have not voted and there's no debate.
May I ask a question?
No?
I wasn't going to debate. I just want.
Emery?
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knutson. Brian Nelson. Paulson.
Yes.
Rodenbacher. President Nelson.
Yes, motion carries. Before we adjourn, I will, as governance chair, ensure that the remaining items go to the next board meeting agenda. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, you're welcome.